Chapter 521. On the way to the Swordbearers Service Center, Guhan saw patches of blood splattered all over the ground. Countless corpses were like broken dolls, casually discarded on the side of the road. There were also some Yuan Ku standing beside these corpses, constantly gnawing on them. Knowing that Guhan did not like these scenes, Bastet did not wait for Guhan to do anything, and very considerately helped Guhan clean up the Yuan Ku. Because he had recovered his divine power and divinity, Bastit's fighting style had become that of a god. The handsome white-haired man only needed to stare, and those Yuan Ku would raise their claws and stab into their chests, then dig out their hearts and commit suicide. Is Bastit's divine power a type of charm? Seeing Bastit's fighting style, Guhan had such a guess. After all, Bastet was a cat goddess. It was normal for him to use his cute eyes to capture his poop scooper and work hard to clean his poop. However, Bastit's charm did not work on all Yuan Ku. At the very least, it was useless on the undead type Yuan Ku. And for the dragon type Yuan Ku, it was not as effective. When the dragon type Yuan Ku committed suicide, they would constantly struggle. Those with strong willpower could struggle out of Bastit's charm and flee to the Swordbearers Service Center in a panic. In the end, they would be hit by a black ray of light shot out from Anubai's ear, turning into dried corpses on the ground. Their souls have already been reserved by someone else. Anubis doesn't like this. Anubis won't be able to get their souls, Anubis said unhappily after every Yuan Shun he killed. In Egyptian legends, although Anubis was the god of death, he never killed with his own hands. He only liked to weigh the souls of others. If a person's soul was pure, and more good than evil, Anubis would not be able to kill them even if he had monstrous divine power. Of course, most humans in this world were more evil than good. Stepping on an ant or pinching a cockroach to death might not seem good or evil to you, but it would be recorded as evil in your soul. Taking away a life was not a small sin. That was why, out of 10,000 people, there would only be one soul that was more good than evil that even Anubis could not kill. The black ray of light shot out from Anubai's ear was actually the weight that judged the soul. If this Yuan Ku's evil was more than good, his life and soul would be taken away by Black Marfa in an instant, turning him into a dried corpse. For Anubis, devouring souls was the main way for him to increase his strength. However, these souls could not reach Anubai's body. Instead, they were taken away by a stronger power. That's right. It was the power from the dimensional vortex. Even Anubis could not resist this power. He could only watch as the souls he wanted were taken away by the dimensional vortex. Along the way from Yangming High School to the Swordbearers Service Center, Guhan did not know how many Yuan Kus he had used the power of the 3 Egyptian gods to kill. 1,000. 2,000. Or more. Anyway, all the Yuan Kus within Guhan's sight had died in the hands of the 3 Egyptian gods. Only when he discovered that some sword-bearers and those who relied on buildings to resist, Jiyu Han would let the 3 gods of Egypt hide. He would take action himself and cleanly help these sword-bearers destroy the Yuan Shun who besieged them, and then tell them to go to Yangming High School to take refuge. About 100 sword-bearers and more than 2,000 survivors had survived because of Guhan's help. They were full of gratitude towards Guhan. Of course, this was all in the future. At this moment, these people's gratitude was useless. Along the way, Guhan also found a lot of strange things. First of all, Guhan had never seen a Yuan Ku who was at or above the nether level. After Guhan entered the core area, the highest Yuan Kus that he had met was a dragon-level Yuan Ku. After that, he had never seen a higher-level Yuan Kus. This was a very strange thing. Just as strange as this matter was that Guhan had not heard any news about a spirit sword-level swordbearer. According to the pleated sword spirit, out of the 23 spirit sword-level swordbearers in Yuzhang City, 12 of them had gone with the army, which meant that there were still 11 spirit sword-level swordbearers left in Yuzhang City. But now, Guhan had not even heard any news about a spirit sword-level swordbearer. This was very unusual. Under normal circumstances, some of the spirit sword-level swordbearers should be stationed on the wall of the ordinary area. The rest of the spirit sword-level swordbearers should also be on standby in the core area, or working in the sword committee building. But the reality was that all the spirit sword level swordbearers seemed to have disappeared collectively. There were no spirit sword level swordbearers in the ordinary area. Otherwise, the thousands of swordbearers on the wall would have lost their command and stayed on the wall like headless flies, not daring to move. And in the core area, there was no trace of a spirit sword level swordbearer. Otherwise, they wouldn't have fought separately. All the important parts were almost all captured by Yuan Ku at the same time. It was as if there was a mysterious force that killed all the spirit sword level swordbearers in an instant. This was even more impossible. Even if a flood level or desolate level Yuan Ku came here personally, he wouldn't be able to do this. It could be said that this was the biggest doubt in Guhan's heart. Along the way, Guhan spent most of his time thinking about the answer to this question. In addition to this doubt, Guhan's biggest doubt was that he didn't see a flying Yuan Ku. The fundamental reason why most of the human swordbearers were able to hold on to Yuan Ku's attack for several hours was that there was no flying Yuan Ku in the entire core area. For example, Yangming High School. Although their wall was built very well, as long as a group of flying Yuan Ku crossed the wall and began to attack from the inside, it was believed that the entire Yangming High School would be captured in a very short time. Being attacked from both front and back was an extremely bad situation in any world. But until now, Guhan hadn't seen a flying Yuan Ku. When he asked those swordbearers who were fighting, they also said that they had never seen a flying Yuan Ku. This was very strange. Loki was famous throughout his life. How could he not understand the importance of flying Yuan Ku? He would definitely arrange a large number of flying Yuan Ku to enter the core area. But in fact, no flying Yuan Ku had appeared. It seemed that all the flying Yuan Ku had been obliterated. Just like those spirit sword level swordbearers who had disappeared. Finally, the location of the Swordbearers Service Center was in sight. Sure enough, as Guhan had guessed, the Swordbearers Service Center was the densest with 40 to 50,000 Yuan Ku occupying the Swordbearers Service Center. This land that used to serve the swordbearers had now become Guhan's paradise. The medical center, the maid center, the equipment center, the task exchange center, and the examination center that Guhan had been to had all become Yuan Ku's paradise. It could be said that the Swordbearers Service Center was an extremely sacred land for the swordbearers. The first step for every swordbearer was to move forward from the Swordbearers Service Center. They took exams here, synchronized coordination here, received equipment here, intercepted tasks here, treated their injuries here, got to know their lifelong friends here, ended their past here. Every swordbearer's life was closely linked to the Swordbearers Service Center. Any swordbearer who saw the sacred land in their heart become a devil's den for Yuan Ku to act recklessly would certainly be sad and shed tears. Wait a minute. What was that? Guhan's eyes suddenly widened as he saw something that made Guhan's anger shoot up to the sky. A living human female was passed around by Yuan Ku like a toy, and finally arrived at the claws of a group of Baihu Yuan Ku. These Baihu Yuan Ku each grabbed a part of this pitiful human's body and gently tore it apart. Amidst her own screams, the woman was torn into pieces and sent into the mouths of these Baihu with relish. It was like eating a chicken. Do you know how it feels to see such a thing? Perhaps you have all eaten honeyed chicken before. When eating a whole chicken with honey sauce, we often like to grab a drumstick with both hands and tear the chicken into 2 halves at the same time. Or we can eat it in 4 halves or 8 halves. At this moment, you can replace this honeyed chicken with a pitiful baby and imagine yourself eating a chicken. It's simply horrifying. Of course, from their standpoint, this is the right thing to do. Just like how humans can eat chickens, ducks, fish and other animals without any sense of guilt, these animals can also eat humans in the same way. But we are humans, so we have to treat this world as humans. We can eat chicken, but chicken can never eat us. Guhan also noticed that many humans were imprisoned in some small shops in the Swordbearer Service Center. These former shops had actually become cages. Yuan Ku surrounded these shops and trapped the humans inside, not allowing them to come out. Once some Yuan Ku became greedy, they would grab a human from the shop or cage and eat them like a tasty honeyed chicken. Should I save them? Guhan couldn't help asking himself. If he saved them, Guhan would be in danger. If he didn't save them, they would only become snacks for Yuan Ku. Guhan fell into a dilemma and couldn't extricate himself. Chapter 522. Should he save them or not? This was a big problem. If Guhan didn't save them, he could use Isai's help to hide himself. Then, he could blend into the Yuan-Ku group and arrive at the emergency center. As long as there were no accidents, Guhan wouldn't need to fight a single battle to complete his mission. However, if he went to save them, although there were 3 U-level Yuan-Ku, and Guhan was confident that he could safely save these poor children, this would definitely alert the U-level Yuan-Ku in the Swordbearer's Service Center. Isais told Guhan that she sensed at least 2 U-level Yuan-Ku in the Swordbearer's Service Center. Although there were 1 less than the Egyptian group, there were tens of thousands of other Yuan-Ku. These Yuan-Ku combined were equivalent to 3 or 4 U-level Yuan-Ku. If he saved them, who knew what would happen in the end? Faced with this situation, Guhan fell into the biggest hesitation in his life. Guhan had never hesitated for more than 30 seconds in front of a multiple-choice question, but now, Guhan had hesitated for a whole minute. In this minute, 4 or 5 unlucky girls were eaten by Yuan-Ku like honey chicken, crispy and chicken-flavored. Beside Guhan, Isais, Bast, and Anubis. Oh, sorry, it was 2 people. Anubis' attention was completely focused on the picture of a golden retriever in a pet shop. Isais and Bast looked at the struggling Guhan with interest. They had spent more time with Guhan than Guhan expected, but this was the 3rd longest time they had seen Guhan hesitate. They were very curious as to what choice Guhan would make. Hey, old white hair, what do you think Guhan will do? Will he save them or not? Isais patted Bast's shoulder and asked. I guess he will. Bast stroked his beard. Although Guhan seems like a person who prioritizes profit above all else, he's actually a very gentle person. Just like His Majesty Shroud Heaven told us, he's a very gentle person. I believe in his judgment. Hee. Then I guess he won't save them. Isis smirked. Do you dare to make a bet with me? The loser will wash the loser's underwear today. We can bet, but Isais, don't you never wear underwear? Bast's words caused Isais to roll her eyes. This unromantic guy. Let's go. After about a minute and a half, Guhan finally made a decision. He stood up from the ground and said to Isis, Isis, use your invisibility on me. Oh. Isais snickered. With a point of her finger, Guhan disappeared. In front of everyone's eyes, Isais reached out and grabbed at the place where Guhan had been standing. It was just air. She didn't grab anything. Perfect. Isais revealed a simple and honest smile, then reached out and touched Bast's long white hair. White-haired monster, help me wash my underwear tonight. After saying that, Isais' 2 hands reached under her leather skirt. She kept twisting her pert buttocks left and right, and slowly pulled down a small white underwear. The small underwear was pulled off Isais' jade-like toes and completely left Isais' body. She handed it to Bast. Take it, you must keep it safe. If you lose it, give me your underwear as compensation. I don't wear underwear. I don't have that thing. Bast held the warm and moist underwear for a long time before throwing it into his divine kingdom. Forget it, I'll think about this underwear at night. Bast looked at the place where Guhan had been standing. Although there was no one there, Bast knew that Guhan was standing there. Lord Guhan, is this really okay? You should want to save them. Bast thought for a while and took the initiative to ask the doubts in his heart. I will save them. Guhan's voice sounded in the air. But I have to save most of them first. Nobody knew when, but in the service center for swordbearers that was crowded with Yuan-Ku, there were suddenly 3 more Yuan-Kus. A dog, a cat, and a bear. From the looks of it, of course, they were a perfect match with these Yuan-Kus. They were all animal templates. But the other Yuan-Kus felt that these Yuan-Kus were very suspicious. Look at the normal magical beast Yuan-Ku, with sharp teeth, sharp claws, beautiful hair, and a mouth that could occasionally spit fire. This was the normal magical beast Yuan-Ku, but these 3 guys that suddenly appeared looked like ordinary white cats, ordinary huskies, and ordinary big bears. No matter how you looked at them, they were just ordinary animals. They did not have the fierce temperament that magical beasts should have. If it wasn't for the dimensional aura surrounding these three fellows, the surrounding elemental puppets would have dissected them to see what they were. These guys, I'll make their blood boil to death later. Ice Eyes said indignantly as she felt the gazes around her. These magical beasts actually had the guts to suspect that their noble deity was just an ordinary animal. Just this point alone was enough for them to die. Shut up. Ice Eyes heard Guhan's voice. Among the three gods, only Ice Eye's spare form was big enough for Guhan to sit on. Other than that, Bast and Anubis's bodies were a little too small. Because there were many Yuan Kus around, there was no place for Yuan Kus to step on, so Guhan could only ride on Ice Eye's neck. Ice Eyes, the female bear, did not like to walk on her stomach. Instead, she preferred to walk upright. This was not strange. After all, creatures that had their own intelligence liked to free their hands. This was the nature of animals. However, for a sword-level swordsman to ride on the U-level Yuan Ku's neck, Guhan could be considered the only one in the world. Although Ice Eyes and the other two Yuan Kus caused a commotion, no Yuan Ku would suspect that Ice Eyes was an undercover spy. After all, magical beast Yuan Ku's intelligence was not high, so the three of them moved smoothly through the Swordsman Service Center. Under Guhan's command, they quickly arrived at the Emergency Response Center. This was a very inconspicuous building in the Swordsman Service Center. It was about the size of 2 or 3 classrooms. It was hard to imagine that this was an important place responsible for the safety of all humans in Yuzhang City. TSK. We're here again. How nostalgic. Bast said emotionally when he saw this building. Well, I still remember the scene when Yi Qing led us to build this first house on this empty land. Ice Eye's eyes also showed a bit of a blurred color. If time could always stop there, freedom and whatnot, it would be fine. This is actually the first building in Yuzhang City. Hearing the conversation between Ice Eyes and Bast, Guhan was a little surprised. He did not expect this inconspicuous building to be the first building in Yuzhang City, and this first building actually became the Emergency Response Center. There must be a lot of interesting stories hidden in it. Unfortunately, history was destined to not record these things. The Emergency Response Center was in front of him, but there was a fat guy blocking the door of the Emergency Response Center. This was a big fat black cat. No one knew how it, as a cat, had fed its body to the extent of a pig. Regardless of its size or weight, it should be a pig. Meow. Meow meow. The fat cat rolled its eyes in boredom. Suddenly, it saw Bast, and its eyes suddenly flashed with a lascivious light. This fat cat just said, "You. Come here." Ice Eye's spare mouth showed a smile, and then she translated the black fat cat's cat language. Don't ask me why a bear knows cat language. They have lived together for more than 1,000 years, so it is not strange to learn a few foreign languages. Meow. Meow. Meow meow cat. Bast meowed a few times very disdainfully. Go away from me. Ice Eyes continued to play the role of translator, translating Bast's words. Meow, meow. The black fat cat became even more excited when it heard Bast's voice, and the fat on its body shook. Little cutie. Count yourself lucky, Meow King has taken a fancy to you. From now on, you are Meow King's beloved concubine. When Ice Eyes translated this sentence, she almost spat out a mouthful of saliva, which made Ice Eyes very happy. Ice Eyes was happy, but Bast felt that his whole body was about to collapse. He used his last bit of patience and said, "Meow, meow, go away, I'm a master, I'm a male." If it was not for Guhan's warning, he would absolutely not make a move on the surrounding Yuan Ku unless it was absolutely necessary, so as not to beat the grass and scare the snake, and expose himself. Bast was probably going to kill this unlucky black fat cat. Meow, meow. The black fat cat suddenly became very excited and continuously meowed dozens of times. This black cat said that he has already seen through the world of mortals. Female cats are all pink skeletons, and only the previous love between male cats and male cats is true love. He fell in love with Bast the first time he saw him. He decided to break through the barrier of gender and live happily with Bast forever. Sorry, I can't take it anymore. Let me lie on the ground and laugh for a while. I haven't laughed so happily in a long time. After explaining, Ice Eyes really lied on the ground laughing. If it was not for Guhan's timely reaction and jumping onto a roof, he would have been thrown to the ground by Ice Eyes. Lord Guhan, I want to kill him, please do not stop me. Bast's gritted teeth sounded in Guhan's ears. What else could Guhan do? He could only helplessly look at the chaotic Swordbearers Service Center. Well, this was related to a man's dignity, so Guhan really could not stop Bast. Chapter 523. A few minutes later, the sudden internal battle between Yuan silhouettes came to an end. The fat black cat was beaten black and blue by Bast, and more than half of its fur had fallen off. However, Bast still knew when to stop. From the beginning to the end, he only used the power of a dragon Yuan silhouette, and did not reveal his true strength. It was precisely because of this that Bast did not kill this unlucky child. He could only let the other party escape from here while meowing. According to Ice Eye's translation, this big fat cat seemed to have gone to find its father for revenge. TSK, nowadays, this kind of my father is Li gang drama is also popular among Yuan Ku. In any case, the black fat cat that blocked the door was taken away, and Bast and the other two officially announced that this building was their territory. Seeing how Bastet had fought just now, the surrounding Grand Elders all expressed that this territory belonged to Bastet now. The interior of the Emergency Response Center was already a mess. All kinds of furniture were smashed by Yuan Ku, countless office supplies were thrown to the ground, and most of them were in pieces. There were 2 corpses lying in the corner of the office. These 2 corpses were no longer male or female. Their heads were missing, and only about half of their lower bodies were eaten. Their stomachs were dug open by Yuan Ku, and the internal organs inside were torn out. Half of them fell to the ground, and the other half was probably in one of the Yuan Ku's stomachs. Seeing such a miserable scene, Guhan clenched his fists tightly, but soon, Guhan put his fists down. Now was not the time to avenge these victims. He had to calm down. Guhan, this doesn't look like the emergency response center you said. Why does it look like an ordinary office? Ice Eyes said in confusion when she saw the scene in the room. This is just the entrance to the emergency response center. The real emergency response center, like the fallout shelter, is built deep underground. Guhan explained, it's just that this emergency response center needs a password to open the underground entrance. Later, I'll need you to help me open the entrance by force. Guhan had seen the working mechanism of the emergency response center in the news. It was a base built 500 meters underground. Even if all of Yuzhong City fell, this emergency response center would still work. Such an important part naturally had extremely high defense measures at the entrance. It seemed that the entrance was protected by a 5-meter thick steel plate and door made of pure dimensional crystals. Without a password, the only way to enter was to break the door by force. Thinking of this, Guhan was still a little worried. He didn't know if the Yuzhong Yuan Ku's strength could break this door. However, when Guhan pushed open a row of closets against the wall, found the hidden button on the wall, and clicked on the controller, he was surprised to find that the entrance door was not locked. Guhan only needed to press it lightly, and the door could be easily opened. There was no need for a password or anything like that. Sure enough, Guhan gently touched the green button, and the wall opened naturally. A slide deep underground appeared in front of Guhan. As long as he slid down the slide, he could reach the emergency response center deep underground. Then the question was, how did the door, which should have been in a locked state at all times, suddenly get unlocked? Could it be that Yuan Ku had already entered the emergency response center and destroyed all the equipment, causing the password to become invalid? Guhan didn't dare to think too much. He had to enter the emergency response center immediately to see what happened. Bastet, you block the door and stop all those who try to enter here. Yuan Ku, Anubis, Ice Eyes, you guys enter my dimensional pocket and follow me. I want to see what happened in the emergency response center. After Guhan gave the order, Ice Eyes and Anubis didn't want to run into the dimensional pocket at all. However, this was Guhan's order, and they wouldn't stay in there for too long. The two of them had to enter the dimensional pocket again and slide down together with Guhan. This was the second time in Guhan's life that he slid down this underground slide. The first time was 12 years ago. At that time, Guhan lost his parents. He didn't know if Guhan would lose anything this time. The slide went all the way down. During this period, several golden scanning lights scanned Guhan's body. These were the lights that scanned Guhan's identity. If they found that Guhan was not a human but Yuan Ku, several passes under the slide would immediately be closed, preventing Yuan Ku from entering the shelter through the slide. This was also the reason why Guhan wanted Isai's and Yuan Ku to stay in his dimensional pocket. Guhan didn't want to be blocked on the slide. After about a minute or so of sliding, Guhan suddenly felt that his butt was empty. He knew that the slide had reached the end. With a beautiful cushion, Guhan successfully stood on the ground instead of falling to the ground. The entire emergency response center was dark. Nothing could be seen, but Guhan could smell a faint smell of blood in the air. This was the smell of human blood. Sure enough, Yuan Ku had broken in here. Had the humans been killed? Guhan immediately raised his vigilance to the highest level. His 5 senses constantly sensed the subtle fluctuations in the air. He knew that there must be something hiding in the dark, ready to launch a sudden attack on him. In fact, Guhan could also take out the flashlight to see the specific situation in the emergency response center. However, once Guhan took out the flashlight, he would inevitably be exposed to Yuan Ku's sight. This was an extremely dangerous thing. Guhan would rather both sides fight in the dark than fight in the light. Is he finally going to attack? Guhan's ears suddenly twitched. He felt a faint tremble behind him. He knew that the enemy was about to attack him. Guhan immediately drew his sky-reliant sword and used it to block the attack. Wait, it's a sword aura. Guhan suddenly realized that it was a sword aura that was attacking him. Apart from a very small number of Yuan Ku, most Yuan Ku did not know how to use sword aura. Could the person hiding in the dark be, "Stop. I am Guhan, the sword wielder. If you are the sword wielder, please stop. Don't hurt your own people." Guhan immediately shouted. Soon, Guhan heard a surprised voice respond to him. "Guhan, is it really you?" It was a surprised and excited voice. It was a voice that Guhan was very familiar with. "Are you Ife?" Guhan did not expect to hear Song Ife's voice here. "It's me. It's me. It's me." Song Ife's excitement was fully expressed when she said it was her 3rd time in a row. Then, Guhan felt a huge boob bumping into his chest. She wanted to press her body against Guhan so that Guhan could feel her trembling. "Guhan, is it really you? Are you really here? I'm not dreaming, am I? Mom told me that when people are about to die, they like to dream about the things they like." Song Ife said in a daze. What exactly had this little girl been through? Guhan could feel that she was on the verge of a mental breakdown. If Guhan had come a little later, the little girl might have really gone crazy. "It's me, your good friend Guhan, I'm here to save you." What else could Guhan say? He hugged Song Ife tightly and patted her back to calm her down. "Great, you're really here, but why do I feel like I'm still dreaming?" Song Ife said in a daze. She pressed her face against Guhan's chest and greedily breathed in Guhan's scent. "That's right, it's this smell. It was the same smell when we were in the hovercraft." Song Ife recalled the time when they took the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's hovercraft to Chongyang Mountain. At that time, Guhan and Song Ife had shared the same bed for 2 hours. It was also around that time that Song Ife was the closest to smelling Guhan's scent. He did not expect that Song Ife could still remember it after more than a month. However, Song Ife didn't seem to be satisfied with just smelling Ji Yuhan's scent. Her head kept moving upwards and finally spread out on Ji Yuhan's face. The two of them were face to face, lips to lips, and they actually kissed each other. It seemed like this was Guhan's first real kiss in the real world. If not counting Qing Pin and Ji Yun, these two little guys would kiss Guhan's lips every morning. Guhan had given away 100 kisses. These are lips. Real lips. Warm and moist lips. Song Ife shivered and became more clear-headed. She secretly stuck out her tongue like a little snake and tried to move forward. She wanted to pry open the lips that were stuck to hers and explore the mysterious place inside. "It's done." At this time, Guhan grabbed Song Ife's head and moved her away from his face. At the same time, Guhan's personal terminal emitted a bright light, illuminating a small area around them. Song Ifei still had an intoxicated expression on her face. She kept sticking her snake-like little tongue forward, as if she wanted to touch something. Ifei, wake up. Guhan had no choice but to grab one of Song Ifei's fingers and pinch a little bit of her fingernail. Ah, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Song Ifei screamed and ran away from Guhan with trembling hands. She had completely woken up from the intoxication. Chapter 524. There was nothing Song Ifei could do in this pitch-black world. All she could do was hold onto the Mingyuan sword tightly and pay close attention to her surroundings. She had no idea how long she had been here. It felt like a few minutes, but it felt like a few years. She had no idea what the situation was like outside, nor did she know what she should do. She could only hold onto the Netherworld Iris sword, as if that was the only way to give herself a little bit of safety. Am I going to die here? Will I never be able to see my parents, and that jerk, Guhan, ever again? That was what Song Ifei kept asking himself in the past few hours. Every time he asked himself a question, Song Ifei's heart would tremble, and he became more and more terrified. Someone will definitely come and save me. Someone will definitely come and save everyone. Song Ifei could only keep trying to convince herself of the fear in her heart. Perhaps the person who will come and save me is that fella, Guhan. How is this possible? What am I thinking? Why would Guhan appear here with you? Song Ifei suddenly recalled the story her mother told her when she was young. She remembered that it was the story of Sun Wukong, a pitiful man who was tortured by the detestable Guanyin Bodhisattva for 500 years. He was forced to separate from the person he loved and go to the Western Paradise to obtain some *T scripture. Song Ifei remembered that after listening to the story, she would ask her mother with longing, "Mom, is Ifei's future husband destined to be my lover just like Fairy's Isha?" Yes. Ifei's future husband must be destined to be with Ifei. It was written on the matchmaker's red list 1,000 years ago, her mother said gently. Then how would Yi Fei know if the man who appeared in front of Yi Fei was my destined husband? Song Ifei asked again. She was still a child, so she always thought that she was destined to have something. In reality, everything could be said to be destined. If you believed it, it would exist. If you didn't, it wouldn't exist. Hihi, then Ifei, remember, if the man is your destined husband or lover, he will definitely appear before you on a rainbow cloud when you are in danger. When you are in danger, he will appear in front of you on a rainbow cloud and save you from despair and pain. As long as you can feel his warmth and smell his scent, you will feel incomparably safe. Mom said with a smile. What about Dad? Is it the same for Mom and Dad? Song Ifei asked excitedly as he clapped his hands. Of course. Mommy and Daddy also decided to be together. Believe Mommy, Ifei, you will meet that person. Originally, this memory had been deeply buried in Song Ifei's mind, and he hadn't thought about it for more than a decade. But at this moment, this long-sealed memory suddenly flooded his mind. Guhan, will he appear? Song Ifei couldn't help thinking, now that I'm in the most dangerous situation, will Guhan appear in front of me on a colorful cloud? Will he give me a safe and warm embrace? Although Song Ifei knew that these were lies his mother said to coax him to sleep, Song Ifei's mind still kept replaying these memories, these expectations, and constantly fantasizing that Ji Yu Han would suddenly appear in front of him, hug him, and give him absolute warmth and safety. This scene kept repeating in Song Ifei's mind, and gradually, Song Ifei felt like she was possessed. If Guhan can really appear here, then I, Song Ifei, will give everything to him. My love, my body, my freedom, my will, everything I have, will all belong to that man. If he's really going to appear here. Song Ifei, who was possessed, kept repeating to herself. From a psychological point of view, this was the moment when Song Ifei's willpower was at its weakest. If she kept repeating something to herself at this moment, then it would definitely be deeply imprinted in her mind. Just like eating and sleeping, it would become an unchangeable belief. Song Ifei didn't know how long this went on. Suddenly, she heard the sound of someone landing on the ground. Song Ifei directly went from a state of confusion to a state of absolute nervousness. Such a sudden adjustment made Song Ifei's clothes soaked in cold sweat in just a few seconds. She lay on the ground and endured for a while, but could no longer control her hands. She directly released the Mingyuan and waved a sword qi to attack Guhan's position. How is it? Did you kill that Yuan Ku? The sword qi disappeared without a sound. Song Ifei did not know what the result was. She was so nervous that she was about to order the Ming Yuan to attack again when she heard the voice that had been echoing in her mind countless times like the sound of nature. Stop, I'm Guhan, the swordsman. If you are the swordsman, please stop, don't hurt your own people. This is Guhan's voice. That's right, this is Guhan's voice. Guhan really came, he really came. Song Ifei threw herself into Guhan's arms like a madman. She didn't even consider what would happen if Yuan Ku impersonated Guhan's voice. From now on, I'm yours. This was the most determined thought in Song Ifei's mind when her lips touched Guhan's. From now on, you are my one and only. Everything I have is yours, my hero. How are you feeling? Better. Guhan patted the back of Song Ifei's hand. Ifei, I didn't expect you to appear here. That's great. I was worried that Yuan Ku would. Well, Guhan actually rarely thought about Song Ifei. All his thoughts were on saving Yuzhang City. I'm fine. I'm fine. Song Ifei nodded shyly. She took the initiative to lean on Guhan's shoulder and hold Guhan's hand. Guhan, I know you will come back to save me. You will definitely come back to save me on the colorful magic cloud. What the hell is a colorful magic cloud? Guhan didn't know what was going on, but Guhan didn't care about these things. After making sure that Song Ifei was fine, he began to care about the situation in the emergency response center. Ifei, why are you here? Where's Ling who was with you? How is she? Guhan asked. Ling again. Song Ifei's words were a little jealous, but she immediately shivered. She realized that she had been so focused on being intimate with Guhan that she had forgotten the most important thing. Guhan, bad news. Ling and that Ku Rokin are both seriously injured. Hurry up and take a look at them, Song Ifei said in a hurry. She had actually forgotten such an important thing. What? You said Ling and Ku Rokin are here too? They're both seriously injured. Guhan immediately stood up from the ground. Where are they? Take me there. Hurry up. Under Song Ifei's lead, Guhan walked to a relatively empty place in the dark. He touched his hand and found two bodies lying on the ground. Strange, Ifei, why are Ling and the others lying on the ground like that? Where's their medical bay? Why don't you put them in the medical bay? Don't you know that they might die? Guhan couldn't help but scold when he saw Ling and Ku Rokin's bodies lying on the ground. We've given our medical bay to someone else. I really don't know what to do. Song Ifei was on the verge of crying after being scolded by Guhan. Guhan realized that he had gone overboard with his tone. He immediately softened his voice. Ifei, don't panic. Tell me, what happened? Where's Ling's medical bay? We saw a lot of people lying on the ground when we came back from the teleportation portal. Mai and Ling's medical bay were used to save people. We were both injured in the end. Ling said that even if we were to die, we shouldn't throw the people in the medical bay out. She should put herself in the medical bay instead. From Song Ifei's words, it seemed like Liunian Ling was acting up. She was willing to risk her life to save people who did not want to die. It was indeed the personality of the Fleeting Time clan. Forget it. Now is not the time to worry about these problems. I remember that this emergency response center should have a backup power source. Why didn't you activate it? Guhan asked again. What backup power source? Song Ifei asked blankly. Guhan didn't say anything else. It seemed like not all girls were as strong as Liunian Ling. He couldn't expect Song Ifei to become like Liunian Ling Anubis. Night should be like day to you. Go and find the backup power source and restore light here. Guhan released the 3 Egyptian gods from his dimensional pocket. Sure enough, night was like day to Anubis. After a series of footsteps, the roar of generators could be heard. Then, the entire emergency response center was restored to light. Chapter 525. It doesn't look like Yuan Ku has been here before. After the power was restored, Guhan could finally see the interior of the emergency response center clearly under the bright lights. The equipment was neatly arranged, and the hygiene was good. There was no sign of damage. If there were any traces, it would be from the fight between Guhan and Ming Yuan. In other words, Yuan Ku had never been here before. That's not right. According to the rules, the Emergency Response Center should have at least 5 sword-bearers stationed here 24 hours a day. At the same time, they should be monitoring every corner of Yuzhang City. Why isn't there a single person here? Where are the human sword-bearers stationed here? Guhan keenly noticed the problem with the Emergency Response Center. Although the Emergency Response Center might not be used once every 50 years, once it was used, it was a key location that concerned the safety of all human beings. There would always be people stationed at the Emergency Response Center at all times, and they would be ready to deal with any emergencies in Yuzhang City at any time. If it had been peaceful for a long time, some of the staff might have slacked off, but now that Yuan Ku could launch an attack at any time, and there had been at least 3 emergency evacuation drills in the past few days, why was there not a single staff member in the Emergency Response Center? It was too abnormal to leave it here. Unfortunately, Guhan did not have enough time to think about it, because there was a more serious situation waiting for Guhan to deal with, and that was the injuries of Liuyan Ling and Ku Rokin. The two of them were simply placed on the ground. Ku Rokin's injury was the most serious. Half of his eye socket near his left eye was gone, revealing his skull and bloody flesh. At the same time, there was a bowl-sized hole in Ku Rokin's chest, and his intestines were exposed to the air. The most serious injury was on Ku Rokin's feet. Everything below his thighs was broken, leaving only a piece of bone exposed. This guy, how did he get injured like this? Looking at Ku Rokin's injuries, Guhan sucked in a breath of cold air. Terrible, it was too terrible. If this kind of injury was inflicted on a normal person, they would have died if they didn't receive medical help within 10 minutes. Only Ku Rokin's body was strengthened, so he could barely keep his breath. Of course, the reason why Ku Rokin was still breathing was partly due to Song Yifei's help. It could be seen that Ku Rokin's wounds were carefully treated to stop the bleeding. In this case, Ku Rokin should be able to live for another hour or 2. However, it was only for an hour or 2. If he did not receive treatment from the medical pod, Ku Rokin would really die here. Ku Rokin was trying to buy himself some time, so he was surrounded by 3 dragon-class Yuan Ku. That's why he's injured like this. Song Yifei explained in a soft voice. Dragon-class Yuan Ku did not sound like a strong Yuan Ku. Even Guhan could kill them with a single swing of his sword. Even if there were 30 of them, Guhan would not care, let alone 3, but this was only for a freak like Guhan. For Ku Rokin, it was already a great achievement. Ordinary sword wielders could only run when they saw a dragon-class Yuan Ku, and when they saw a dragon-class Yuan Ku, they could only wait for death. To be able to fight 3 dragon-class Yuan Ku alone, Ku Rokin was indeed one of the top sword wielders in Yuzhang City. If it were not for Guhan, he would definitely be the #1 sword wielder in Yuzhang City. Sigh. Guhan sighed and looked at Liuyan Ling, who was lying on the other side. Compared to Ku Rokin, Liuyan Ling's injuries were much better. Her limbs and facial features were still intact. However, her chest was torn open by something like a claw, from her neck to her pelvis. Similarly, Song Yifei treated this wound simply and stopped the bleeding. To be honest, both Liuyan Ling and Ku Rokin's injuries were serious enough to be fatal, and they both needed immediate treatment in the medical pod. However, Guhan only had 1 medical pod with him. In other words, Guhan could only save one of Ku Rokin or Liuyan Ling. Faced with a choice again, Guhan did not hesitate for long this time, or rather, he did not hesitate at all. He directly threw Ku Rokin into the medical pod. Guhan, how are you going to save him? What about Ling? Seeing that Guhan saved Ku Rokin, Song Yifei could not understand. If it were her, she would definitely choose Liuyan Ling without hesitation. We have to save him, Guhan said firmly. Although Guhan did not like Ku Rokin's attitude toward his father and disliked his Chunyan personality, Ku Rokin was the only descendant of Ku Rokin. If Ku Rokin died, Ku Wudao's bloodline would be cut off. This was something that Guhan could not accept. Ku Wudao had died for the lives of 5,000 swordbearers. How could he watch his last descendant die just like that? What about Ling? Song Yifei asked, unwilling to give up. Ling will be fine. This injury is nothing to her. With the Liunian family's resources, she should be able to recover after taking some medicine when she wakes up, Guhan said calmly. As the Liunian family, Guhan did not believe that Liunian Ling did not have any life-saving items in her dimensional pocket. As long as she wakes up, everything would be fine. How can we do this? Are we just going to watch Ling lie here? Song Yifei said, but in his heart, he was thinking, if I'm the one lying here, will Guhan leave me alone? Song Yifei's face darkened. Yifei, take good care of them. I'm going to find a way to activate the refuge system here. After Ji Yuhan finished speaking, he got up and walked to the rows of control computers. These were the control centers that controlled the entire refuge system. All the refuge systems had independent power sources, independent survival facilities, and independent control systems. Even if Yuzhong City on the surface had become a pile of ruins, the underground Yuzhong City refuge could still operate for another 20 years. If necessary, they could even activate the frozen life support system to keep the people inside frozen for another 200 years or so to maintain their lives. The computers were turned on and the system was loaded. Under Guhan's operation, the Emergency Response Center's control system was quickly restarted. However, when Guhan was about to activate the refuge system, a tricky problem appeared in front of Guhan. Guhan did not have the authority to activate the refuge system. As one of the most important systems in Yuzhong City, the refuge system consumed countless resources and wasted a lot of money every time it was activated. Therefore, the refuge system could not be activated at will. The system was tightly locked by 3 layers of passwords. The first layer was the 126-digit password. This password had to be manually entered and changed every month. Only the operators and the people in charge of the Emergency Response Center, as well as the senior members of the Sword Committee, knew the 126-digit password. How could Guhan know it? Guhan only wanted to go to the Emergency Response Center and activate the refuge system. However, when he got there, he was shocked to find that there was such a barrier waiting for him. Guhan really did not know what to do. If it was a powerful opponent in front of him, Guhan was confident that he could kill the opponent with his own strength. If it was a maze in front of him, Guhan was confident that he could find the exit. However, when it was a 126-digit password in front of him, Guhan was really helpless. There were all sorts of ways to crack a password, but there were only 2 ways to do so. The first step was to experiment with the numbers one by one. A 126-digit password had about 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999. 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999. 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999. 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999. 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999, 999. The second method was to hack it, just like the nuclear weapons base in the Betrayal of Artoria dungeon. Guhan used his hacker friend to hack the nuclear weapons control system and completed an unprecedented escape. But now that all communications were terminated, how was Guhan going to contact his hacker friend? Even if they managed to contact the hacker, it was impossible for the hacker to appear here. Such a complex password required the hacker to actually operate on the computer. In short, the hope that they had finally seen with great difficulty seemed to have turned into despair at this moment. No, I haven't lost yet. I must find another way. If the total control system cannot be cracked, then can I manually activate this refuge system? Guhan raised his head and tried to search the entire emergency response center, but no matter how he looked at it, it did not look like a place with manual control. Woo! Great! Woo! Suddenly, Guhan, who was a little upset, suddenly heard a burst of crying behind him. It was Song Ifei's voice. Why is she crying? What's wrong, Ifei? Did Ling's condition worsen? Guhan asked in a hurry. Although he was a little indifferent to Liuyan Ling just now, it was based on his trust in the Liu family. Guhan believed that as long as Liuyan Ling woke up, she would have a way to cure him. No. Ling is still in a coma. It's my mom. I just received a text message from my mom. She sent a lot of messages. Woo. Great, Mom is fine. Mom, I miss you so much. Song Ifei said with a choked voice. It turned out that she suddenly received a text message from her mother. She was sad and happy at the same time, so she cried. But wait, Song Ifei received a text message from her mother? Chapter 526. Song Ifei had received a message from her mother. This meant that the communication within Yuzhang City had been restored. Guhan took out his personal terminal. As expected, the signal bar was full, which meant that the network connection had been restored. Guhan's fingers trembled as he tried to press Song Hammer's name in his contact list. Beep beep beep. After a few beeps, the call was connected. F*CK. Sour Popsicle, you're finally back? Also, when did the communication go back? Song Hammer's surprised voice came from the other end of the call. It seemed like Song Hammer was safe. Stinky Toad, how are you doing? Where are you now? Are you still in Sankingshan district? Guhan asked quickly. I'm in the district. I just came back from the main gate and rested for about 10 minutes. Our district is now surrounded by thousands of Yuan Ku. We're all hiding in the district's gymnasium. Song Hammer's voice suddenly became unnatural. I say, Sour Popsicle, let me tell you something. Please don't be sad. The building you're staying in has been completely destroyed by Yuan Ku. No one in the building managed to escape. I'm afraid your maid is also. When Mai Yun. Ji Yu Han's face revealed a slightly sad expression, but it was not particularly sad. He had seen so many humans die along the way, so Ji Yu Han was already a little used to it. Moreover, Ji Yu Han did not build any deeper feelings with Wen Mai Yun from the beginning to the end. For Ji Yu Han, Wen Mei Yun's death was indeed a sad thing, but it was not to the extent that it was bone-piercing. Toad, how's the situation over there? Can you defend? Guhan asked again. I don't know. Song Hammer let out a sigh. Just now, 3 more sword maidens had their personal shields shattered due to a moment of carelessness. Another one was torn in half by Yuan Zhen. Our sword maidens have shrunk from 40 to 20. At this rate, Sour Popsicle, you won't be able to see this Stinky Toad anymore in an hour. That won't happen, Stinky Toad. You'll be saved soon. Guhan said firmly to Song Hammer, I am now in the emergency response center. I can start the entire refuge system in a moment. Then, you and the other people in the stadium can hide in the refuge. Trust me, I can take care of everything right away. You don't know, but Cast Cloud Iron is the pillar of this place. She can withstand the siege of a group of Yuan Zhen by herself. I'm about to fall in love with her, ha ha ha. Song Hammer laughed loudly and took the initiative to hang up the communication. All right, all right, all right, all right. Good, good, good. Stinky Toad will always believe in you, Sour Popsicle. Enough talking, it seems like another sword Maiden has withdrawn. I'm going to let Cast Cloud Iron go up and hold them off. You don't know, Cast Cloud Iron is the pillar of this place. After ending the communication with Song Hammer, Guhan's fighting spirit was reignited. He didn't think that there would always be a way out. The communication was restored at the critical moment. It seemed that the old base station at Yangming High School had been readjusted. Guhan looked at the time on his personal terminal. It was just half an hour after Guhan left Yangming High School. With the communication device, Guhan could contact the outside world. He didn't need to guess the password anymore. He just needed to contact someone who knew the password. Therefore, Guhan quickly dialed a number on his personal terminal. After a long silence, the busy tone finally sounded. It was a success. Guhan successfully connected to the number. Guhan, my good disciple, where are you now? Are you unable to rush out? Are you hurt? Where are you? This is Master. I'm going to save you. Liu Lei's excited voice came from the other end of the communication device. He thought that Guhan was blocked in the Yuan Ku's encirclement after rushing out of Yang Fortress and was contacting him for help. Master, I'm fine. I have an urgent matter to ask. What is the password to open the first level of the refuge system? Master, please tell me quickly, Guhan said hurriedly. What? Why do you need the password to open the refuge system? That thing is only useful in the emergency response center. What do you need it for now? Liu Lei said subconsciously. He didn't realize that Guhan had already arrived at the emergency response center. At this time, it was only a little more than an hour since Guhan left Yang Fortress. Liu Lei thought that Guhan was at most on the way to Yuzhong City. He would never have imagined that his precious disciple was already in the emergency response center of Yuzhong City. This was unimaginable to Liu Lei. He didn't believe that a sword wielder could enter the emergency response center of Yuzhong City from Yang Fortress in just an hour. Master, it's true. If you don't believe me, I'll take a photo for you. Guhan knew that any explanation would be useless. If he were Liu Lei, he wouldn't believe it either. So at this time, the best way was to produce evidence to convince Liu Lei, and there was no evidence more useful than a photo of the emergency response center. However, because they were using an old base station, the communication was very unstable, and the speed was very slow. It actually took dozens of seconds to send a photo. Therefore, after Guhan was silent for dozens of seconds, Liu Lei, who was far away in Yang Fortress, received a notification from his personal terminal. Liu Lei clicked on the photo in confusion and saw a photo that he had never imagined. The photo clearly showed what the emergency response center looked like. The central computer screen showed a password prompt, and the lower right corner of the screen clearly showed the time when the photo was taken. 3008 AD, September 12, 2:30 p.m. Liu Lei subconsciously looked at his personal terminal. 3008 AD, September 12, 2:31 p.m. Good disciple, have you really arrived at Yuzhong City's emergency response center? Liu Lei's voice was filled with great strength and emotion. Good disciple. Good disciple. How did you contact me in Yuzhong City? Has Yuzhong City's communication been restored? Yes, Master. Your disciple has already activated an old and abandoned base station. The internal communication within Yuzhong City has been basically restored, but the external communication doesn't seem to be smooth. The photo just now took dozens of seconds to reach Master, Ji Yuhan said. Quickly tell. Master. Yuzhong City. How is the situation in Yuzhong City? Our people. Are they all right? Liu Lei's voice trembled because he felt that he didn't have the face to ask his people how they were. He had decided to abandon the people of Yuzhong City and flee to Yangjing City with the rest of the people. In Liu Lei's heart, he had already branded himself as a traitor. Yuzhong City's situation is still okay. The ordinary areas are still safe. Only the core area is in chaos, but our sword bearers are still fighting. There are still ordinary people hiding in their homes. Master, the evacuation system has not been activated. We don't have time. You should tell me the password to unlock the door. Good disciple, I can't wait to travel through the void and appear by your side to help you, but I can feel a pair of eyes staring at me from outside Yang Fortress. I can't leave at all, so I can only leave everything to you. Good disciple, I believe in you. You can definitely save everyone. Liu Lei shivered. You're right. It's more important to open the evacuation system. I will tell you the password now. Don't get it wrong. 314-159-2654. 224. Through the phone, Liu Lei told Guhan the password one by one. Guhan entered it without hesitation. When all 126 passwords were entered, the computer made a pleasant sound and a blue prompt appeared. The password is correct. Welcome to the emergency evacuation control system. How is it, right? Liu Lei asked excitedly. By the way, Master, it's all correct. Guhan continued to type on the computer. Soon, the second layer of password blockade was displayed. But this time, he didn't need to enter a password. Instead, he needed to verify the iris. The iris was more unique than a fingerprint, so most systems now used iris recognition. To identify the iris, Liu Lei paused. Only the 3 people in charge of the emergency response center can unlock this refuge system, as well as all the spirit sword level sword holders, the standing committee members of the sword committee, and the main members of the council. Only their iris can unlock it. Disciple, can you find these people to enter the emergency response center? I'm afraid it's a little difficult, but I'll rush out now. I must find those people. With that, Guhan was ready to leave the emergency response center and rush out to find the people who could unlock the iris. No. You'll waste a lot of time going back and forth, and how many people's lives will be in danger? What's more, the third layer needs a genetic code, and there are only 2 people in Yuzhang City who can unlock this genetic code. I'm afraid you won't be able to find these 5 people now. Liu Lei's words stopped Ji Yuhan from rushing out, and the genetic code for the third level also made Ji Yuhan feel completely helpless. There were only 5 people in Yuzhang City, and it was obvious that one of the 2 people was either Liu Lei or Zhu Wudao. But now that Zhu Wudao was dead and Liu Lei was restricted in Yang Fortress, it was impossible to unlock the third layer of genetic code in any case. Guhan could hear Liu Lei take a deep breath on the other side of the communication device. Good disciple, there is actually a way to ignore the iris unlock and the third layer of blockade. You can directly open this refuge system, Liu Lei said in a deep voice. What is it? Master, please tell me. I'll do it even if I have to risk my life. Guhan immediately promised. Don't worry, you don't have to risk your life. This is a good thing. After so many years, it's time for the master of the Sword Pavilion to take over. Chapter 527. How many years has it been? It's time for the Sword Pavilion master to take over again. Hearing Liu Lei's words, Guhan's heart began to tremble violently. What did that mean? What did it mean that it was time for the Sword Pavilion master to take over again? An unrealistic thought suddenly popped into Guhan's mind. Master, I don't understand what you mean, Guhan said faintly. My precious disciple is so smart. How can he not understand what I mean? Liu Lei joked. Master is now the chairman of the Sword Committee and the Sword Pavilion master. This is too tiring for your master. Yuzhang City doesn't give you 2 salaries. Master. Guhan didn't know what to say. He had roughly guessed what Liu Lei meant. Good disciple, I've decided that from now on, I will officially step down as the 25th Sword Pavilion Master of Yuzhang City. The heavy responsibility of the 26th Sword Pavilion Master will be handed over to you. Are you willing? Liu Lei's voice was calm and serious, without a trace of a joke. Master. I'm afraid I'm not suitable. It took a long time for Guhan to digest this news. Was this a joke? Was Master really going to give him the position of Sword Pavilion Master? Master, I'm just a sword wielder. How can I take on the heavy responsibility of Yuzhang City's Sword Pavilion Master? Why not? Our Sword Pavilion Master is different from the chairman of the Sword Committee. Liu Lei smiled. The chairman of the Sword Committee has to be one of the strongest people in Yuzhang City. There's still some election. However, in the Sword Pavilion, the Pavilion Master's word is law. Whoever the Pavilion Master says will be the successor of the Sword Pavilion. As long as I am willing, even an ancient sword wielder can become the Sword Pavilion Master. What Liu Lei said was true. Unlike the elected chairman of the Sword Committee, the inheritance of the Sword Pavilion Master was more like a master-disciple relationship. It had always been the previous Sword Pavilion Master who appointed his position to a certain swordbearer. This swordbearer did not have to be the disciple of the Sword Pavilion Master. As long as it was a swordbearer who belonged to the city, it could be appointed as the Sword Pavilion Master. This was a rule that had been passed down since Kunzu founded Yangjing City. No one knew what Kunzu was thinking at that time. Why did he let the Sword Pavilion Master appoint his successor? Wasn't he afraid that the Sword Pavilion would become the exclusive property of a certain family? But to everyone's surprise, after 1,000 years, the Sword Pavilion in the 8 base cities had never had a master of the Sword Pavilion. Some of the Sword Pavilion masters were passed on to their sons, but that was because the sons were too weak and the Sword Pavilion masters were not passed on to their children. The Sword Pavilion masters could only be passed on to 3 generations at most. Some of the Sword Pavilion masters were not very capable, but that person managed the Sword Pavilion well and never made any mistakes. Some of the Sword Pavilion masters were passed on to sword bearers with bad reputations. But history proved that the sword bearers became the mainstay of the Sword Pavilion and led the Sword Pavilion through one crisis after another. All in all, the unique inheritance rule of the Sword Pavilion had lasted for 1,000 years. Liu Lei was also directly appointed as the successor by the previous Sword Pavilion Master. Ji Yuhan was aware of this. He also knew that the succession of the Sword Pavilion was not restricted to one style, and that the succession of the Sword Pavilion Master didn't need to go through a vote or something like that. He also knew that there had been many shocking things in the history of the Sword Pavilion Master's succession. However, nothing like this had ever happened in the past 1,000 years, where the Sword Pavilion Master's succession was directly passed down to a swordbearer at the famed sword level. That was the lowest record. If Ji Yuhan were to take over the Sword Pavilion Master's succession, it would mean that Ji Yuhan had broken the record of the lowest rank for a Sword Pavilion Master and become the Sword Pavilion Master with the lowest rank in history. But Master, there are still many swordbearers at the Spirit Sword level in Yuzhang City. If I take over the Sword Pavilion Master, I'm afraid that the seniors will. Guhan continued to refuse. How dare they? Liu Lei snorted coldly. Now I am the only immortal sword-level swordbearer in Yuzhang City. When they reach my level, then they can talk to me. However, after saying this tough word, Liu Lei's tone softened a little. Of course, I also know that it is too hasty to pass the position to you now. You will be under great pressure in the future. I originally planned to wait until you become a swordbearer at the famous sword level, and then pass the position to you at the right time. But now I have no other choice. Only when you officially become the Sword Pavilion Master can you break through all the blockades in the refuge center, activate the refuge system, and save the poor people in Yuzhang City. This is the current situation, and you are also trying to save millions of people. I believe that those seniors will not say anything to you. But, Master, is it enough to just give the title of Sword Pavilion Master to me? Could it be that his disciple would be able to break the code with an additional title? No matter how I think about it, it is impossible, Guhan said doubtfully. Yes, of course it is not just a verbal statement. There needs to be a procedure. On the other end of the communication, Liu Lei pressed a yellow button on his personal terminal. Suddenly, Guhan heard a cute lowly voice in the communication between him and Liu Lei. Hello, long time no see, Master Liu Lei. Yuzhang City's quantum network has been restored. It seems that you have recovered Yuzhang City. Tomono Kakaze, congratulations. The speaker was actually Tomono Kakaze, the core intelligence of humanity's ultimate artificial intelligence, the BAT system. But thinking about it, It was not surprising that Tomono Kakaze would appear here. After all, normal communication was through Tomono Kakaze's quantum network. Grandma Jinai, don't make fun of me. You have regained control of Yuzhang City. Don't you know how terrible Yuzhang City is? Liu Lei said with a bitter smile. But Liu Lei, a white-haired old man, actually called Tomono Kakaze Grandma. When Guhan thought of Tomono Kakaze's lowly appearance in Sword Maiden Online, he couldn't help but feel disgusted. But this was not strange. In terms of age, Tomono Kakaze was almost 500 years old. She was more than old enough to be Liu Lei's grandma. In fact, all humans, including Jendi, had to respectfully call Tomono Kakaze Grandma when they saw her. I really don't know. The power has been cut off. I have lost control of 95% of the cameras. I can't monitor the situation in Yuzhang City, Tomono Kakaze said cutely. By the way, why did you suddenly call me over? Aren't you busy commanding the battle? Why did you call me? Grandma Jinai, Liu Lei is going to hand over the position of Yuzhang Sword Pavilion's master to Yuzhang City's swordbearer, Guhan. I called you here to hold the transfer of authority, Liu Lei said word by word. Phut. Even if Tomono Kakaze was an electronic life, Guhan could imagine her spitting out a mouthful of milk on the other end of the communication line. Liu Lei, are you kidding? Say it again. What do you want? Who are you going to give the position of Sword Pavilion's master to? I know very well. I want to give the position to Yuzhang City's swordbearer, Citizen Guhan, Liu Lei repeated again. Good. I understand. Yuzhang City is full of strange things. Tomono Kakaze stuck out her tongue. But isn't the transfer of authority a little too hasty? According to the rules, you have to submit at least 5 written applications. Grandma Jinai, Yuzhang City is in deep trouble now. Everyone is waiting for the shelter to open to save their lives. Where can I find written applications for you? Liu Lei said angrily. But if I don't have written applications, it's equivalent to violating the core rules. If those people in white coats find out, I'll be in a lot of trouble. The people in white coats that Tomono Kakaze mentioned were the researchers in charge of monitoring her operations. They could press a nuclear bomb at any time and perish together with Tomono Kakaze. Don't worry. After the battle in Yuzhang City is over, I will call the Intelligence Research Institute to explain everything to you, Liu Lei said. Okay. For the sake of these poor people in Yuzhang City, I'll help you this once. I'll transfer your authority. Okay, the authority transfer is complete. The entire transfer of authority took less than a second. Wasn't it a little too fast? Shouldn't there be some kind of ceremony or background music to lighten the mood? Sigh, I've lived for hundreds of years. I can't believe there's something I haven't seen before. Tomono Kakaze mumbled and disappeared from the communication channel. Liu Lei then said, Good disciple, now all the authority of the Sword Tower Master has been transferred to you. All you have to do is select the system reset button at the bottom of the screen and place your finger on the blood collection device. You'll be able to control the entire shelter system. Yes, Master. Guhan followed Liu Lei's instructions and entered the reset program. The glass cover on the blood collection device opened automatically. Guhan placed his finger on the blood collection device and felt his fingertip being pricked by the needle. Bright red blood was collected by the blood collection device. Testing blood DNA. Progress, 20% to 60% minus 100%. A series of prompts appeared on the screen. DNA test completed. Citizen number, 666103298311124617854119, sword level sword wielder Mr. Guhan. Sorry, your identity does not meet the reset requirements. Comparing with the database for the second time. An anomaly has been detected, your identity information has been changed. Welcome, Citizen ID, 666103298311124617854119, sword grade sword wielder, Sword Pavilion Master Ji Han, your identity has met the reset limit, the system has begun to reset. System reset complete. All passwords and iris passwords have been reset. You can now set new passwords or immediately activate all the functions of the system. Please select your mission. Guhan chose to activate the system function without hesitation. He found the button to activate the shelter system and pressed it heavily. Chapter 528. In the gymnasium of Sankingshan district, there were at least 2,000 yuan ku surrounding the gymnasium. More than 10 sword maidens stood at the entrance, continuously killing off the sword maidens one by one. Occasionally, a sword maiden would retreat back into the gymnasium because their personal shields had been broken. However, a new sword maiden would immediately rush out of the gymnasium and take the place of the previous sword maiden. Among the group of sword maidens blocking the entrance, there was a 2-meter-tall sword maiden that stood out the most. She alone occupied the space of 3 sword maidens, and with a sweep of her giant sword, she could push 5 or 6 yuan ku out of the gymnasium at the same time. Although the damage was not very high, it was enough to stun the yuan ku in front of her, and the effect was equivalent to that of 3 sword maidens. Captain, this is bad. There are only 2 sword maidens on standby, and the other sword maidens haven't had enough time to reset their personal shields. What should we do? One of the short sword bearers said anxiously. The leader they were referring to was none other than Song Hammer. Among these 40 or so sword bearers, there were about 10 who were treasured swords. For Song Hammer to be able to become the leader of these sword bearers as an ancient sword rank sword bearer, it seemed like his leadership skills had been recognized by everyone. It's all right, I've calculated it. As long as we hold on for a few more minutes, 3 of the sword maidens' personal shields will finish resetting. We still have hope, Song Hammer said confidently to the sword maidens around him. However, very quickly, another sword maiden reported a piece of extremely bad news. Captain, look up, Yuan Ku has already climbed onto the roof. There are only a few pieces of glass on the roof. Once they break the glass, our defense will be completely destroyed. Hearing this, Song Hammer immediately looked up. Through the glass, he saw a few black shadows climbing up the roof and starting to hammer at the glass. These glass panels would not last more than a few seconds. If Yuan Ku successfully broke in from the top, the entire gymnasium would collapse from the inside. Song Hammer turned his head and saw the thousands of survivors trembling in fear inside the gymnasium. Among them were his father, mother, younger brother, and sister. Endless misery welled up in his heart. There's no other way. That brat, Guhan, should help me burn incense every year. That's enough. In a room in Taishan district, a young mother was holding her 2 daughters, hiding in her room and shivering. She had closed all the doors and windows tightly, hoping that Yuan Ku would not notice that there was someone in the room. But things didn't go according to her wishes. She suddenly heard a loud crash coming from her door, and then the sound of the door falling to the ground. Even through the bedroom door, the mother could hear the faint howling of a wolf. Ku Tian I have no other choice. I can only let you suffer less pain before you die. As she spoke, the mother took out a kitchen knife that she had hidden under her skirt. She had just seen the scene of her neighbor being dismembered and eaten by Yuan Ku. No matter what, she would not allow such a scene to happen to her and her children. Ah! After a series of screams, Long Xiaoya watched as the girl sitting beside her was grabbed by a baboon, Yuan Ku. This baboon was like pulling a doll, breaking the girl's legs and throwing the broken legs to the little baboon beside him to eat. Then, he directly revealed his thing that was as thick as a fire extinguisher, and directly put the girl's upper body on it. He crazily kept thrusting up and down, using the girl's body as if he was using a plain cup. After thrusting and thrusting hundreds of times, the baboon filled the unlucky girl's body with some kind of white liquid. The girl's body had long been pierced, so the liquid directly filled the girl's abdominal cavity. After using it, the baboon conveniently threw the girl's body away. Probably because it disliked the liquid, even though the girl's body still looked delicious, none of the surrounding Yuan Ku had any interest in eating it. Milk cake was not something that everyone liked. Fortunately, the girl died at the first moment because she could not bear the torture, so she did not have to suffer a lot of pain afterwards. What happened to this girl made the girls trapped in this auntie cafe shout themselves hoarse. These white-collared beauties, who usually wore exquisite makeup, were elegant and charming, had completely lost the temperament of office women they used to have. Ashima's clothes, Hongtashen's babies, Jinsheng's boots, little panda jewelry, these girls who used to chase after these things all had nothing now. They did not care about their image at all. Hugging each other like quails, they curled up in the corner of the coffee shop and kept crying and shouting, as if this was the only way for them to survive. At first, Long Xiaoya also shouted like these white-collar beauties, but soon Long Xiaoya fell silent. She directly lay on the ground, motionless as if she was dead. Sure enough, Yuan Ku did not seem to like eating dead humans. Long Xiaoya actually survived until there were less than 10 people left in the coffee shop. Suddenly, another wild boar rushed into the coffee shop. This wild boar, Yuan Ku, kept sniffing the ground and finally followed the smell to Long Xiaoya's side. The wild boar's saliva had already dripped onto Long Xiaoya's face. Long Xiaoya screamed in despair in her heart. She knew that her doomsday was coming. It was also at this moment that a voice suddenly rang in Long Xiaoya's ears. All the survivors of Yuzhang City, this is the Special Command Communication Channel of the Yuzhang City Sword Committee. I am the temporary Commander-in-Chief of Yuzhang City, Guhan. Sword Immortal Cloudy Sky has handed over the command of all the swordbearers of Yuzhang City to me. Now I am in charge of everyone. I have also issued an emergency order. I've already received full authorization from Sword Immortal Cloudy Sky to use this communication channel. There is no need to doubt my identity, and you are not allowed to doubt my identity. All you have to do is follow my orders. First, all the swordbearers, if you are alone, please stay where you are and ensure your own safety. Do not act rashly. If you have a team of more than 5 people and are 2 kilometers away from the Swordbearer Service Center, please try to go to Yangming Center. We have already established a temporary command center there. We need your strength. Second, all the survivors, now that the evacuation system has been activated, please immediately go to the nearby location with the emergency evacuation sign and use the slide to enter the underground shelter. Wait there for Yuzhang City to be reclaimed. Everyone, please believe me. The future of Yuzhang City is in our hands. We can definitely drive all the Yuan Ku out. It's Guhan, its master. Long Xiaoya, who had been pretending to be dead, shivered. She never thought that her mother's master would become the temporary commander-in-chief of Yuzhang City. It seemed that her master's future would be very bright. Long Xiaoya never thought that this would be the first thought that popped into her mind when she heard the news. But soon, she realized that the most important news was that the evacuation system had been activated. Her hope of survival was finally here. Long Xiaoya was not the only one who felt that there was hope. The remaining dozen or so people who were hiding in the corner immediately ran madly to the location with the emergency evacuation sign at the counter of the cafe. There was a small door there. As long as they passed through the small door, they would be able to enter the underground shelter. The small door had been sealed previously, and no one could open it. But now, the small door actually opened by itself. Charge! 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 At this moment, the 10 women all turned into Wang Juanxia and Usain Bolt. Each of them was an Olympic champion in the 100-meter race. In the blink of an eye, these women rushed to the small door and began to jump down one by one. Faced with the sudden situation, the wild boar was a little confused. It even forgot to eat the delicious food beside its mouth. As a result, Long Xiaoya crawled up from the ground with her hands and feet and quickly ran to the wall. Seeing that the delicious food beside its mouth was gone, the wild boar immediately snorted and began to use its mouth to take Long Xiaoya back. At this time, there were 3 other women in line in front of Long Xiaoya. The wild boar's mouth was about to reach them. Seeing that she was about to be taken back by the wild boar again, Long Xiaoya did not even think about it. She directly grabbed the hair of a woman in front of her and used all her strength to throw her backward. The woman was caught off guard and was thrown by Long Xiaoya. She was thrown right into the wild boar's mouth, causing the wild boar to slacken its attack. Because of this slacken, the small door of the shelter was finally empty. Long Xiaoya did not even look at the woman that she threw behind her. She directly jumped into the small door and escaped. Ah! Bitch! Beast! Bitch! Long Xiaoya, who was sliding, seemed to be able to vaguely hear the woman's painful howl outside. She could imagine what kind of painful fate this woman would suffer under the wild boar's mouth. But all of this had nothing to do with Long Xiaoya. The bedroom door was opened. It was not opened by the wild boar, but by the mother inside. Seeing that the prey ran out by itself, the wild boar was obviously stunned. The mother smiled miserably and threw her 2 6-year-old children in the direction of the dining room. She shouted, "Xiao Ku, Xiao Tian, jump down, oh oh." Wild boars loved to eat children the most. They realized that the delicious food in their mouth might be lost. They did not even care about the mother in front of them and directly wanted to take the 2 children away. But at this time, this brave mother took the initiative to block in front of the wild boar. She hugged the heads of the 2 wild boar and used her own life to buy precious time for her children. Finally, seeing her children jump into the emergency entrance, the mother smiled happily. Death was worth it. Chapter 529. All civilians are to enter the shelter in an orderly manner from the 3 escape entrances. All sword bearers, hold this place. If there is still a civilian who hasn't escaped, then no one is allowed to leave. In the gymnasium, the ceiling had already been broken by Yuan Ku. Yuan Ku kept falling from the ceiling like a faucet. Song Hammer, who knew that the gymnasium's main gate could no longer be held, immediately ordered all the sword bearers to open the gymnasium's main gate. He brought all the civilians to a remote and narrow corridor in the northwest corner. He wanted to rely on the corridor's terrain to make a final stand. At that moment, Guhan's voice appeared in everyone's personal terminal like the sound of nature. Song Hammer shouted in his heart that there was always a way out. He began to arrange the evacuation plan. However, because they had retreated to the corridor, there were originally more than 20 entrances in the gymnasium, but in the end, only 3 of them could be used. Thousands of people wanted to enter the corridor from the 3 entrances. Even if they passed through one every second, it would still take a full 20 minutes. Song Hammer had to defend this corridor for 20 minutes. This was an extremely difficult battle. When they retreated to the corridor, 5 sword bearers had died at the hands of Yuan Ku because they were careless in their retreat. The remaining sword bearers were also injured. On average, the energy of their personal shields was less than 20%. Song Hammer was helpless. He didn't have Guhan's intelligence, so he could only defend the corridor with his life. Even if the personal shields of the sword bearers were broken, he wouldn't let the sword bearers go back. He ordered the sword bearers to rely on their durability to fight. This was undoubtedly forcing the sword bearers to break. Gradually, out of the 40 sword bearers, 35 had broken. Only Song Hammer's cast Cloud Iron and a few other sword bearers were still holding on. How many people are left that haven't retreated? Among the last 5 sword maidens, another sword maiden's body swayed, and it shattered into 2 pieces of metal that fell to the ground. The sword maiden's wielder coughed up a mouthful of blood, and he seemed to have aged 10 years in an instant. The position that the sword bearer had vacated was quickly filled by the cast Cloud Iron. She alone was already enduring the continuous attacks of 6 Yuan Ku. There are still 200 people left. It will take about a minute, one of the subordinates reported. That's good. What are you talking about? Continue holding on, Song Hammer said through gritted teeth. Time slowly passed. Under Yuan Ku's attacks, the other sword maidens were destroyed one after another. Only cast Cloud Iron remained at the front. Fortunately, most of the others had already retreated. Only Song Hammer and the last sword wielder were still waiting outside. Come back, Cloud Cast Iron. The cast Cloud Iron's durability was less than 10%. Logically speaking, the cast Cloud Iron should be returned to the sword and Song Hammer would be safe after jumping into the refuge entrance. However, if she wanted the sword lady to return to the ancient sword, she would have to break free from her connection with Yuan Ku. However, the cast Cloud Iron was being attacked by Yuan Ku, and Yuan Ku was in close contact with the cast Cloud Iron. How could she return to the ancient sword? At this time, the best choice for Song Hammer was undoubtedly to ignore the cloud cast iron and jump into the shelter. However, How could Song Hammer give up on the sword lady? Song Hammer clenched his teeth and rushed behind the cast cloud iron. He hugged its thigh and the cast cloud iron transformed into a sword and returned to Song Hammer's hand. In a situation where the sword couldn't return to the ancient sword, the sword wielder could only touch the sword lady's hilt and make the sword lady return to the ancient sword. However, this way, the cast cloud iron would return to the ancient sword, but Song Hammer would be exposed to Yuan Ku's sharp teeth. Brother, help me give the cast cloud iron to Guhan. Tell him not to forget me during the holidays. Song Hammer smiled bitterly and threw the cast cloud iron in his hand to the swordsman who was still waiting at the entrance of the shelter. Then, his abdomen was simultaneously pierced by the horns of 3 rhinoceros magic beasts, causing 3 large holes to appear in his abdomen. Song Hammer. The remaining sword wielder hugged the cast cloud iron. When he saw Song Hammer's miserable state, he hesitated and wanted to save Song Hammer. Hurry up and go. Song Hammer turned around and shouted at the sword wielder. The sword wielder stomped his feet anxiously and, seeing that all the refuge entrances on the monitor were open, and survivors entered the refuge entrances from the slides, Guhan finally let out a long sigh of relief. At least the lives of ordinary people were saved. The next thing was to find a way to kill all the Yuan Ku that broke into the core area. These Yuan Ku were all sent in through the quantum teleportation formation. Although their arrival was very sudden and the impact on humans was very tragic, these Yuan Ku had a fatal weakness. However, these Yuanying had a fatal weakness, and that was that they lacked the ability to carry on. Every time they killed one, there would be one less. As long as the power of the remaining human sword wielder could gather in Yangming High School and gather the power of all humans, they could continue to use guerrilla warfare to consume the effective power of Yuan Ku. Then, these Yuan Ku would be eliminated by humans sooner or later. In fact, at this time, what Guhan was most worried about was not the problem of eliminating these Yuan Ku, but the root of the threat to Yuzhong City, Loki, and the creation divinity in his hands. No matter how well Guhan did and how many people he saved, once faced with the full power of the creation divinity, all of this would be useless. Guhan, hurry up and take a look. What happened to Ling? Suddenly, Song Ifei began to exclaim. Guhan could only temporarily put aside his doubts and rushed to Liunian Ling's side. At this time, he saw that Liunian Ling's wounds that had stopped bleeding had exploded again. Blood began to flow freely. At this rate, in less than 5 minutes, Liunian Ling would die of blood loss. How could this be? Didn't Ling's wounds stop bleeding? Jiyu Han was also shocked by fleeting time Ling's injuries. This was too illogical. Why would a wound suddenly burst open? Yi Xi's eyes lit up. Guhan took out a white medicine from his dimensional pocket. This was a medical nanobot. When Guhan was fighting with the big evil demon beast, he was seriously injured by the big evil demon beast. Thanks to Liunian Ling's medical nanobot capsules, he was quickly healed. This caused Guhan to owe Liunian Ling millions of yuan. Later, Guhan considered safety issues and the lack of medical pods, so he specially bought 5 bottles of nanobot from the medical center at a high price in case of emergency. He did not expect to use it on Liunian Ling for the first time. It made people sigh that everything in the world was like reincarnation. Nanobot capsules were usually taken orally, but in the case of a patient who was unconscious, it was not impossible to apply the nanobot on the wound. There were a total of 8 capsules in a bottle. Guhan carefully opened these capsules and evenly sprinkled the white powder-like nanobot capsules on the wound that ran through Liunian Ling's upper body. This wound was very long, and a capsule could only be applied about 1/8 of the way. 1 bottle could be used just once. Guhan did not hesitate to take off Liunian Ling's clothes, exposing Liunian Ling's body that she had treasured for 18 years and had never shown to a man. Especially the cherry on top of her breasts, which stood up in the cold wind in the emergency response center. Of course, Jiyu Han's attention was not on this at all. He was very serious as he sprinkled all the nanomachines evenly on the wound. By the time he used the last capsule, only the wound under the dress was left untreated. You do it. Guhan handed the last capsule to Song Ifei. The area under the skirt was really a girl's absolute territory. Japanese action movies did not have to censor the upper body, but the lower body still had to be censored. Otherwise, it would be banned by the Japanese government. This was already the case for Japanese action movies, let alone for Guhan. He could see Liu Yanling's upper body, but he could not show Liu Yanling's lower body. Fortunately, Song Yifei originally graduated in medicine, so there should be no problem handing it over to her. I got it. Song Yifei took the capsule, and Guhan turned around. Then, he heard the sound of the skirt being taken off. It seemed that Song Yifei had also taken off Liu Yanling's skirt. But within a few seconds, Song Yifei said awkwardly, "No, Guhan. Ling has a lot of hair here. With the hair, these nanobots can't touch the wound. Then I'll shave the hair." Guhan immediately said. How on earth did Song Yifei graduate? Didn't she know that women had to shave their hair for gynecological surgery? But I don't have a razor here, Song Yifei said sadly. She was a medical student, but she did not have a special razor. How could she cut all the hair off? Use a sword. Don't you have a sword? Guhan was also anxious. Song Yifei, why is she so slow? I'm not you. How can I use a sword? Song Yifei said sadly. Indeed, no one except an expert swordsman like Guhan would dare to use a sword to shave hair. What if a piece of her flesh was shaved off? F***ck, get out of my way, Guhan cursed. Then, he turned around and pushed Song Yifei away. He stared at Liu Yanling's lower body, and the heavenly sword in his hand flashed. The black hair began to dance in the air like dandelions in spring. Although the follow-up treatment of the hair was not good, the part that was directly cut was very smooth. There was not even a bit of hard stubble. It looked as perfect as a young girl's skin. I'll leave the rest to you. Guhan turned around while panting. The 3 strikes of green lotus seemed to be working again. The sword elements in his body did not have any abnormalities. Yifei, tell me, how on earth did Ling get injured, and who was she killed by Yuan Ku? Chapter 530. Okay, you can turn around now, Song Yifei said softly. Guhan turned around and saw that Liu Yanling's lower body had been covered by a piece of clothing, and her upper body was only covered by her chest, leaving her lower abdomen uncovered. This was for the convenience of observing the wound. Guhan could see that under the effect of the nanomachines, Liu Yanling's wound had begun to improve. The blood was no longer flowing, and the skin and flesh of the wound had begun to heal again. Everything seemed to be developing in a good direction. Yifei, tell me, how did Ling get injured? Who was the Yuan Ku who injured her? Why are you guys here? Taking advantage of this opportunity, Guhan finally had the time to ask Song Yifei what had happened to them, why they were so seriously injured, and why they were here. Song Yifei could only smile wryly and tell his story. Although Liu Yanling's name was not on the battle list, Liu Yanling still forced herself to follow Song Yifei out. Zhu Wudao and Liu Lei could not stop her, so they could only arrange for Liu Yanling and Song Yifei to be at the end of the team, which was considered a relatively safe position. Although it was safe at the end, Liu Yanling and Song Yifei also discovered something unusual. When the main force left the quantum teleportation array, Liu Yanling suddenly had an ominous premonition. After walking for a while with Song Yifei, she immediately returned to the vicinity of the quantum teleportation array. Next, Liu Yanling spent a long time using an ability that was said to be the unique secret technique of the Liu family, which Song Yifei did not know about. Immediately after, he discovered that the surroundings of the quantum teleportation array were covered by a mysterious power, hiding the real scene. It seemed that the quantum teleportation array was calm and peaceful, but in fact, it was covered by a power that concealed the real situation. Intuition told Liu Yanling that what was covered was most likely Yuan Ku's main force. Therefore, Liu Yanling and Song Yifei left, intending to use their personal terminals to contact the main force that was not far away and ask them to turn back and guard the quantum teleportation array. But at this time, Hyla suddenly appeared beside Liu Yanling. She was a Yun-level Yuan Ku, and she hid in the dark and launched a sneak attack on Liu Yanling and Song Yifei. Liu Yanling was caught off guard, and the shield on her body shattered instantly. If it were not for the life-saving item passed down from the Liu family, Liuyan Ling would have been killed by the sneak attack. However, Hyla's attack destroyed the personal terminals of Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei, causing them to completely lose contact with the main force. Hyla continued to attack Liuyan Ling, but Liuyan Ling seemed to have some special item on her that prevented her attacks from hitting Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei. It was as if Liuyan Ling was transparent. Therefore, Liuyan Ling began to escape with Song Yifei. While running, she told Song Yifei that this was Yuan Ku's plot. They wanted to use the quantum teleportation array to launch a sneak attack on Yuzhong City, and she wanted to destroy the entire quantum teleportation array in order to ensure the safety of Yuzhong City. As a result, when Liuyan Ling escaped toward the quantum teleportation array, the hidden Yuan Kus stopped hiding. They all appeared out of thin air, and a Yun-level Yuan Ku directly appeared in front of the human swordbearers who were responsible for guarding the control device of the quantum teleportation array and killed them with lightning speed. Then, this Yun-level Yuan Ku released a few naked humans. These humans were actually raised by Yuan Ku until they were fat and fair, and their eyes were filled with monstrous hatred. After they manipulated the control device for a while, the defense device that would automatically shut down the function of the quantum teleportation array when it detected Yuan Ku was no longer working. Now, Yuan Ku could walk through the quantum teleportation array freely. What was even more unexpected was that after the first Yuan Ku passed through the quantum teleportation array, the human who was responsible for controlling the quantum teleportation array at the other end didn't shut down the quantum teleportation array at the other end. It was as if there were no humans on the other end. At that time, Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei, who were far away from the quantum teleportation array, couldn't stop everything at all. When they arrived near the control device, it was already too late. Liuyan Ling killed these humans who were controlling the device, but when she was about to destroy the device, Hyla had already rushed over and used the power of the void to protect the device. At this time, the special ability or item that Liuyan Ling used to resist Hyla seemed to have reached its limit. With no other choice, Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei could only return to Yuzhong City through the quantum teleportation array with these Yuan Ku, planning to call the police there. But when they returned to Yuzhong City, the Swordbearers Service Center was already in chaos. The room where the quantum teleportation array was located was already in a mess. The bodies of some people in white coats and swordbearers could be seen lying on the ground, but their sword maidens were intact. It looked like they had been suddenly attacked by someone, and they didn't even have the chance to use their power before they died. Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei escaped from this room and hid in a hidden office. They tried to use the network in the office to contact the other spiritual sword-level swordbearers, but they were horrified to find that all the communication numbers of the spiritual sword-level swordbearers were in a state of unreachable. Even the emergency response center's communication was not picked up. So they could only call the communication of the only other sword-bearers they were familiar with, Ku Rokin's communication and Yi Wenjun's communication. They first dialed Ku Rokin's communication and told Ku Rokin everything, so Ku Rokin made the same choice as Guhan, inviting them to gather near the emergency response center and activate the refuge system in the emergency response center together. But when they dialed Yi Wenjun's communication, the base station in Yuzhong City was destroyed, and all communication was lost in an instant. Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei had to fight their way to the emergency response center, ready to wait for Ku Rokin's arrival. Because only Ku Rokin had the password to open the door of the emergency response center, they had to wait for Ku Rokin. On the way to the emergency response center, Song Yifei and the others used their medical pods to save a few dying swordbearers. But now that they thought about it, it was a waste because the medical pods couldn't be put into the dimensional pocket after storing people. They could only hide the medical pods in some hidden places in the Swordbearers Service Center and leave in a hurry. They were probably found and killed by Yuan Ku by now. After some twists and turns, they finally arrived at the entrance of the emergency response center, but instead of waiting for Ku Rokin, they first met a Yun-level Yuan Ku, Queen of Succubi, Helena. Although the Queen of Succubi was a Yun-level Yuan Ku, she was considered a weakling among the Yun-level Yuan Ku, and her main attack method was mental control. This ability might be more useful against ordinary swordbearers, but it was completely useless against Liuyan Ling, because Liuyan Ling was the descendant of Jendi, and she was the descendant of several generations of Jendi, so her blood carried the mark of Gendi. This kind of mark was not very useful at other times, but it could naturally protect the souls of her descendants from being controlled by mental power. After her biggest advantage was restrained, Liuyan Ling was actually able to fight against the Queen of Succubi, whose physical attack ability was originally weak, for a long time by relying on the myriad sword technique. However, Liuyan Ling was still 3 major realms and 5 minor realms lower than her opponent, and this gap couldn't be made up for. Soon, Liuyan Ling was at a disadvantage, and she was besieged by the other Yuan Ku that rushed over. In the end, the Queen of Succubi seemed to be really angry. According to Song Yifei's description, she actually took off a horn from her head, and with a speed that Liuyan Ling couldn't resist, she used this horn to leave such a terrifying wound on Liuyan Ling's body. The moment she was injured, Liuyan Ling fainted and never woke up again. Song Yifei hugged Liuyan Ling and wanted to save her, but she couldn't resist the attacks of the other Yuan Ku. She was just a slightly stronger sword wielder. Seeing that she was about to die in the hands of the Queen of Succubi, Ku Rokin finally arrived. He actually blocked the attack of the Queen of Succubi with a sword, and then took Song Yifei and Liuyan Ling desperately to retreat to the emergency response center. The Queen of Succubi didn't seem to be in the mood to deal with Song Yifei and Ku Rokin, and just let the other Yuan Ku besiege them. There were a total of 2 entrances to the emergency response center. In addition to the one that Guhan entered, there was another entrance in another location. Ku Rokin went to this entrance. After a fight, Ku Rokin was seriously injured in order to protect Song Yifei and Liuyan Ling. Although he finally succeeded in entering the password and opened the door of the emergency response center, his legs were directly cut off by a big crab with a pair of scissors. The 3 of them used the last of their strength to escape into the emergency response center. They didn't even have time to activate the closing procedure. This was also the reason why Guhan found that he could enter without a password when he entered from the other entrance. Then, Song Yifei, who entered the emergency response center, found that the emergency response center was silent, as if there was no one there at all. Of course, she couldn't care less. After using the last of her strength to give emergency treatment to Song Yifei and Zhu Wudao, she fell into a state of fear until Guhan arrived. This was the whole story of Liuyan Ling and Song Yifei. After hearing their story, Guhan found a lot of useful information. It proved that at least 3 Yuan Ku had entered Yuzhang City through the quantum transmission array. And it seemed that before Yuan Ku entered Yuzhang City, all the spirit sword bearers had disappeared. To be able to do this, Yuan Ku must have planted a mole in Yuzhang City in advance, just like those humans who controlled the quantum transmission array. This discovery made Guhan very depressed. Would there finally be a day when humans would betray their own compatriots? Oh no, Guhan, Ling's wound is bleeding again. Just as Guhan was silently digesting Song Yifei's experience, he suddenly heard Song Yifei's cry. At this time, Liuyan Ling's wound, which had stopped bleeding, suddenly burst open again. The powder-like nanomachines had disappeared, and a large amount of blood gushed out again. To put it bluntly, Liuyan Ling was on the verge of death. Chapter 531. The Queen of Succubus took off her horn. A thought flashed through Guhan's mind. He quickly reconnected to the internet through his personal terminal and began to search for information about the Queen of Succubus. Immediately, a piece of information that could be considered relatively new appeared. Yuan Ku name, Helena, Queen of Succubus. Level, Universe. World of 2 dimensions, World of Warcraft. HP, 5 stars. Attack, 6 stars. Agility, 7 stars. Magic, 8 stars. Ability. The main attack method is to use mental attacks to put the enemy into a state of illusion, then use the Devil's Whip to destroy the opponent. Ultimate move, Fantasy Land of Existence, Skin-Shredding Whip, Black Horn. Introduction. A magical beast that widely exists in various dimensional worlds, the Queen of the Succubus race. She has the power to control people's hearts with desire. She can endlessly trigger the desire in the opponent's heart, and then immerse the opponent in a world of desire, unable to wake up. Compared with her mental control ability, the Queen of Succubus' physical attack ability is not good. In the case of staying awake, Spirit sword level swordbearers are evenly matched with her. However, you must be careful when she takes off the black horn on her head. The black horn has an extremely strong ability to break through defense. Even the personal shield of an immortal sword level swordbearer may be broken in one blow. You must be careful. Battle record. The number of recorded battles in the real world is 22. Battle result. Out of 22 battles, 12 were defeated, 10 were repelled. All sword bearers above immortal sword level were repelled. 9 times spirit sword bearers were repelled 4 times, escaped twice, and died 3 times. Spirit sword bearers below spirit sword level escaped twice, and the rest all died. Battle suggestion. Non-spirit sword bearers, please try your best to escape. Spirit sword bearers can resist and escape if they have enough confidence in their willpower and their sword maidens are level 3 or above. Please note, when resisting, once the opponent pulls out the black horn, please replace it with an ancient sword level sword maiden to avoid damaging the spiritual sword level sword maiden's personal shield. Also, do not let the black horn hurt your flesh. Otherwise, you will definitely fall into a coma, and the wound will not heal. In the case of no companions, you will definitely die. Special note, once you are hit by the black horn, you will fall into the abyss of desire. All the blood in your body will lose the ability to coagulate, and your skin will lose the ability to regenerate itself. Your wounds will never heal, and you can only rely on nanomachines to repair them. Science was temporarily unable to treat this kind of injury. They could only wait for the victim to struggle out of the abyss of desire on their own, or for a spiritual type sword mistress to infiltrate the victim's spiritual world and bring her out of the abyss of desire. During this period, we can only use the nanomachines to suppress the injury. There's no other way. This information was a great help to Guhan. At the very least, Guhan knew why Liuyan Ling's wound could not heal, but it also put Guhan in a very difficult position. According to Guhan's original plan, he should now take the 3 Egyptian gods to find Loki, and then find a way to banish, destroy, or simply snatch the creation divinity in his hands. In short, he couldn't let it stay in Loki's hands. Guhan believed that the reason why Loki did not move at this time was because the creation divinity was in a state of cooldown. It might be a few years, a few months, a few days, or even a few hours. The end of the world could come to Yuzhong City at any time. Guhan wanted to use every second as a minute to find Loki as soon as possible. But at this time, Liuyan Ling was in this terrible situation. Although the nanomachines could delay the injury, a whole bottle of nanomachines could only work for about 5 minutes. The remaining 4 bottles of nanomachines could only be used for another 20 minutes at most. This little time was definitely not enough for Liuyan Ling. Once Guhan left here, Liuyan Ling would definitely die. On one side was Yuzhong City, and on the other side was Liuyan Ling. Guhan was once again in a dilemma. The first time Guhan chose to give up those poor women in the cage, so this time, what would Guhan choose? Well, Liuyan Ling was more important. Bastet, come here. After Guhan shouted, a white-haired handsome guy came out from the corner. Song Ifei rubbed his eyes. It was strange. He had looked at that place several times, but there was no one there. Guhan, who is he? Why is he here? Song Ifei asked curiously. Don't worry about it. He is my friend, the person who can save Ling. Guhan said quickly, Bastet, can you enter her spiritual world and save her from that abyss of desire? Abyss of desire? Isn't that Helena's territory? Bastet's face, which had always been very calm, actually showed a somewhat horrified expression. That won't do. I will definitely not go to the abyss of desire. I don't want that crazy woman to know that I'm back. Absolutely not. Guhan, you'd better find someone else. You know Helena. Guhan looked at Bastet strangely. You have a relationship with her? Hihi, not just a pretentious person. They are a dewy couple lying on the same bed. Lord Jiyu Han, why don't I tell you about it when you're asleep tonight? It's a very interesting thing. Isis laughed as she came out on her own. Tonight. Sleep. Song Ifei immediately pricked up his ears and stared at the seductive woman in front of him with an unfriendly gaze. He thought to himself, this woman doesn't look like a decent woman. I wonder which bar this B*TCH came from. I dare you to say one word. Bastet immediately glared at her fiercely. The two dignified deities, universe-class Yuan Ku, glared at each other like two children throwing a tantrum. All right, I'm not interested in your romantic affairs. I have to save Ling now. Bastet, if you have the ability to save her, do it immediately. Otherwise, you will be violating our agreement. You know the consequences. Guhan threatened. I will definitely not enter the abyss of desire again. How about this? I will send another person's consciousness in. Anyway, after entering the abyss of desire, it doesn't matter what level he is. It all depends on his own will. If I go in, I might not even be as useful as an ordinary person with a strong will. Bastet insisted that he would never enter the abyss of desire. Ice, why don't you go in? Since Bastet didn't want to go in, Guhan could only look at Ice. Don't look for me. This abyss of desire is the territory of the Queen of Succubus. Desire exists in my priesthood. If I go in, the first thing I will do is fight the Queen of Succubus. I can't go in even more than Bastet. Ice's reason made Guhan unable to refute. Now, only Anubis and Song Ife were left. One's will was similar to the Huskies, and the other's was only a few times stronger than the Huskies. How could Guhan let them enter the abyss of desire? It would be best if they didn't fall into the abyss and couldn't get out. This way, there was only one person left who could enter the abyss of desire. As if awakened from a distant dream, Ji Han found himself in a strange and dazzling world. In this world, other than the sky, there was only a straight street. On both sides of the street, there were shops of almost identical sizes. These shops were all of the same size, the same decoration style, and the same color. Other than the words on the signboards, almost all the other details were exactly the same. Guhan saw the words gambling shop written on the shop on his left, and prostitute shop written on the shop on his right. As he walked down, Guhan saw murder shop, revenge shop, reunion shop, regret shop, fame shop, power shop, online games shop, harem shop, cultivation shop, wireless shop, interdimensional shop, science fiction shop, lowly shop, royal sister shop, thunder shop, help her shop. There were all kinds of strange shop names, and the further he went, the stranger the shop names became. Along the way, Ji Han saw thousands of different shop names. These shop names seemed to represent all the desires that humans could think of. Seeing this, Guhan gradually understood that the purpose of these shops was to fulfill the desires of the people who entered. Guhan guessed that as long as one entered these shops, one would be able to realize the desires represented by the shop in the illusory spiritual world, just like the name Abyss of Desire. This place is only used to deceive those weak-willed trash. How could I, Guhan, be confused by the desires here? Guhan thought disdainfully. He turned his head and saw a shop named Reunion Shop next to him. Reunion Shop? Could it be that they are selling reunion? The voices and smiles of his parents suddenly appeared in Guhan's mind. A fanatical thought emerged in his mind. As long as he entered the reunion shop, he would be able to see his parent. This thought was so fanatical that Guhan couldn't help but put his hand on the door of the shop. With a gentle push, he would be able to enter the reunion shop and enjoy the reunion with his parents, never to be separated again. No, these are all fake. It's an illusion. A wave of clarity swept through Guhan's consciousness. He withdrew his hand that was about to push the door open. Since you're here, why don't you take a seat in the shop? Just as Guhan withdrew his hand, a coquettish female voice came from behind Guhan. Guhan turned his head and saw a classical beauty dressed in a traditional Chinese costume that looked like exquisite porcelain standing behind him. Seeing this woman, even if it was Guhan, his heart instantly became hot. He wanted to tear off this woman's clothes, enter her body, and make this woman his. Every bit of this woman's outfit perfectly scratched the most itchy place in Guhan's heart, as if this was the outfit and appearance of Guhan's dream lover. Chapter 532. You're the Queen of Succubi. Although this woman was the goddess of Guhan's dreams, and his heart was constantly stirring with desire, Guhan still maintained his last tranquility. This young master can actually guess my identity. I'm very surprised. The classic beauty smiled charmingly. But I don't remember inviting young master to this Elysium. Young master, you came uninvited. Return my friend's will to me, and I'll leave immediately. I don't dare to disturb Her Majesty the Queen of Succubi, Guhan said with a bow. Your friend? I have many friends here. Which one of them is your friend? Helena smiled foolishly. Although young master came uninvited, I still welcome you very much. Since young master is here, don't leave. How about staying here and having fun? Whatever young master likes, this place can provide young master. Why do you want to return to that miserable world outside? Fake things are fake. They can't compare to real things. Guhan said coldly. Ha ha ha, you said that my place is fake, but is the outside world real? Helena looked at Guhan as if she was looking at a fool. Fake, it's all fake. Everything is fake. There's nothing real in this world. It's better to stay here. When fake is real, it's also fake. It's nothing more than that. Lunatic. Guhan looked at Helena as if he was looking at a lunatic. Isn't this fellow from the Western Magical Beast Camp? Why is her mouth full of Eastern Wuxia or Eastern Celestial Court Camp people, calling me young master and concubine? Since young master is so insensitive, then I won't say anything. Since young master wants to find someone, then go ahead. There are 9,999 shops here, and young master's friends are in these shops. Please go ahead, young master. Helena smiled, and disappeared before Ji Yuhan's eyes. No one knew where she went. Looking for someone? Guhan looked at the endless shops on this street. Guhan started to feel a headache. Logically speaking, Liuyan Ling should be in a shop that had the strongest desire in her heart, just like how Guhan's desire was to reunite with his family. So, what did Liuyan Ling desire the most in her heart? Guhan fell into deep thought. He tried hard to recall the bits and pieces of his interaction with Liuyan Ling, trying to find clues from these memories. Could it be that she wants to live the life of an ordinary girl? As the direct descendants of the world's #1 family, they should all have such thought. Guhan guessed silently. Suddenly, he found that the street scene in front of him had changed, and he had arrived at Loving Father's restaurant. After hesitating for a while, Guhan directly pushed open the door of Kind Father's shop and walked in. She's been taken away. On an empty throne, Helena, the Queen of Succubus, was holding a wine glass, and a sage-like immortal was standing opposite her. Immortal Kai Jingzi, are you satisfied? I've been following your instructions, haven't I? Helena chuckled in response. Not bad, not bad. You've done a good job. I'll record this credit on the dimensional list. You can rest assured, Kai Jingzi said with satisfaction as he stroked his beard that was more than 10 centimeters long. There's no need to record the credit. I'm not interested in your dimensional list. Helena waved her hand. You can leave now. This matter is over. Aren't you going to record it on the dimensional list? Kai Jingzi's expression suddenly changed when he heard Helena's words, and a hint of hostility appeared on his face. Forget it. The best path is right in front of you, but you don't want to take it. This is also your good fortune. I can't be bothered with you. However, don't forget our agreement. Don't get involved in the matters of Yuzhang City anymore. Leave Yuzhang City as soon as possible. Chimpage, I know. I'll leave. Now, Immortal Kai Jingzi, you can leave, right? This filthy place of mine can't accommodate the pure and flawless Immortal Kai Jingzi. Helena once again issued an eviction order. Ungrateful demon. Kai Jingzi snorted coldly. With a flash, the purple ribbon immortal robe on his body disappeared. I'm a demon. What do you, Kai Jingzi, think you are? Helena spun the wine glass in her hand and muttered to herself, these guys think they control the light from Providence in the world, but they don't know that this light from Providence has never been controlled by any immortal. Even if he's the Jade Emperor, what can he do in the face of the true light from Providence? But that kid just now is really capable. It's been more than 700 years, right? He hasn't experienced the feeling of letting himself out for 700 years. Helena was indeed the Queen of Succubus. She actually thought about the scene that had just happened and started touching herself in this hall. After escaping from the abyss of desire, Guhan even felt that his body was a little exhausted. Everything had clearly happened on the willpower level, but his body could still experience it. It was really strange. Liuyan Ling snorted a few times and also escaped from the abyss of desire. What's wrong with me? Aren't we still in the abyss of desire? Why did we suddenly come out? Liuyan Ling asked in confusion when she saw that she had appeared in an unfamiliar place. I suddenly found the exit, so we came out. Guhan laughed and fooled her. Fortunately, a portion of Liuyan Ling's memories had been erased. Otherwise, if Liuyan Ling really returned with these memories, who knew if she would still have the face to face him? You must be hiding something from me. Seeing Guhan's perfunctory expression, Liuyan Ling knew that Guhan was definitely not telling the truth, but vaguely, Liuyan Ling's heart told her that she must not ask anymore, or she would be the unlucky one instead, so Liuyan Ling did not pursue it anymore. But in the next second, Liuyan Ling discovered another big problem. What's wrong with my clothes? Who took off my clothes? Fleeting Ling cried out in shock. She realized that her clothes had been stripped off, and when she looked down and saw her bare breasts, she was on the verge of exploding. F***CKF**CKF**CKF**CKF**CKF**CK CKF**CKF**CK. My leg hair was kicked off by someone. Damn leg hair, can the hair there be called leg hair? Guhan and Song Ifei beside him were speechless. How could Liuyan Ling use this term to describe it? But thinking about it carefully, leg hair was already a pair of legs. It could also be counted as leg hair. I helped you shave it. Ling, your wound can't stop bleeding. If I don't shave the leg hair and use the nanocapsules, it will be too late. Song Ifei took the initiative to take the responsibility, including shaving her hair, so she took the initiative to carry out the task. Hearing that it was Song Ifei who did it, Liuyan Ling's expression became better. She took out a bottle of nanocapsules from her dimensional pocket and swallowed it. Soon, her wound was completely healed. Okay, Ling, you are safe now. I have to go out and do something else. Wait for me here, don't go out. Seeing that Liuyan Ling was fine, Guhan was also relieved. He secretly decided to forget everything that happened in the abyss of desire and then walked toward the exit of the emergency center. Wait, where are you going? I'll go with you. Liuyan Ling immediately chased after Guhan. She wanted to go with Guhan. I want to go as well. Song Ifei followed closely behind Fleeting Time when he saw Fleeting Time Ling charging towards the berserker. You can't go. Guhan pulled Liuyan Ling's hand away. Your heaven inquiring sword is about to break. How are you going to fight against Yuan Ku? Fleeting Time's heaven-seeking sword had been heavily injured in the previous battle, and it was on the verge of breaking. I still have Yi Xian. As long as I have the myriad sword skill, do you think I'm weaker than you? Liuyan Ling argued stubbornly. Bast, do it. Guhan had no intention of arguing with Liuyan Ling. He immediately ordered Bast, who was hiding in the dark, to knock Liuyan Ling out with the strength of Yuan Ku. Take good care of her and brother Ku Rockin. Sword Immortal Baiju has been sacrificed. I can't let him die. Guhan handed Liuyan Ling over to Song Ifei and gently caressed Song Ifei's face. It's not that I don't want to fight alongside you, but I can't accept losing either of you. If you really want to help me, then wait for me here. I'll be back for you. Alright, after training in the abyss of desire, Guhan has learned how to say sweet nothings. No, I was born with this talent. Sir, His Majesty Jendi has arrived. Should we get ready? The pleated sword spirit suddenly walked into the command hall of Fort Yuyang and reported to Liu Lei, who was sitting on a chair with his eyes closed. His Majesty Hao Tian has arrived. Liu Lei shivered and quickly pulled the pleated sword spirit. Quick, come with me to welcome His Majesty Hao Tian. No need. Brother Liu Lei, you've been fighting hard all the way. How can I let you come and welcome me? The air in the command hall trembled, and Hao Tian Jendi walked out of the void. I, pleated sword spirit, greet His Majesty Hao Tian. Long live His Majesty Hao Tian. The pleated sword spirit immediately bowed when he saw Hao Tianjendi. However, the pleated sword spirit didn't kneel. Although Hao Tianjendi was Jendi, the pleated sword spirit was from Yuzhang City. There was no need for him to kneel to Yangjing City's Jendi. Dispense with the formalities. Hao Tian patted the pleated sword spirit's shoulder and said to Liu Lei, "Brother, I don't have much time. Hurry up and order your men to line up and follow me to kill our way out." "Pleated, I'll leave this matter to you. Hurry up and organize the troops." Liu Lei immediately handed this task to the pleated sword spirit. The pleated sword spirit accepted the order and left. Only Liu Lei and Hao Tian, the two top swordsmen, were left in the hall. "Brother, don't be sad about Yuzhang City. Yuzhang City will return to you sooner or later. Don't worry." Hao Tian saw that Liu Lei didn't look well, so he took the initiative to comfort him. "Thank you, Your Majesty. Actually, I'm ashamed. If Yuzhang City was gone, I wouldn't have anything to worry about. But now, Yuzhang City is still in our hands, and I have to lead everyone to escape. I'm ashamed." "Is that so?" Hao Tianjendi pondered for a while. "I won't use the big picture to persuade you. If you do what you want, you won't have any regrets in life. I'll take care of your people for you. You can rest assured." "Sure enough, you old thing really understand me," Liu Lei sneered. "All right then, I'll leave my useless children in your Majesty's hands. My biggest dream is to die in Yuzhang City. Sorry for making a fool of myself." With that, Liu Lei disappeared from the command hall. "This old thing really wants to die. Unfortunately, even if you want to die, I'm afraid you won't be able to. In this *TTY world, I'm nothing," Hao Tianjendi muttered to himself. Chapter 533. Under normal circumstances, the fallout shelter only had 3 entrances, but there were no exits. They had to wait for the emergency response center to confirm that everything was safe before they would open the elevator at the exit and bring the humans in the fallout shelter back to the ground. Without the emergency response center's permission, no one could activate the elevator in the fallout shelter. However, this was not a problem for Guhan, because the emergency response center was in Guhan's hands. Under Guhan's control, the emergency response center's elevator began to rise, and the cat, dog, and bear lazily walked out of another room. Guhan rode on Isai's back and carefully looked around, trying to find Loki's location. Guhan's target was Loki, and he wanted to gather the power of the 3 U-class Yuan Kus and take away the god of creation from Loki's hands. Guhan almost searched the entire Swordbearer's service center, but he still could not find any trace of Loki. Not only was Loki not found, but the U-class Yuan Ku that Song Ifei mentioned also did not appear. Just when Guhan was at his wit's end, his communicator suddenly rang. Of course, Guhan turned it on silent mode, or else it would alarm the nearby Yuan Ku. This call was from Lei Mu. Guhan thought about it and still picked up the call. "Master Military Governor, you finally picked up my call, I thought you." Guhan could hear Lei Mu let out a long sigh of relief. At least 100 communication requests appeared in Guhan's personal terminal, and Guhan did not answer any of them. At that time, he was in the abyss of desire saving Liunian Ling, so how could he answer other people's calls? Lei Mu thought that something bad had happened to Guhan. Now that Guhan's communication was finally connected, Lei Mu let out a sigh of relief. "Lei Mu, I don't have time to talk to you. Make a long story short, what do you want from me?" Guhan said quickly. "Yes, Admiral. We have completed the mission you assigned to us. The people in the 3 residential areas have all been rescued. So, I'm here to ask you what we should do next," Lei Mu said. "Then let's start to clear out the scattered Yuan Kus." Guhan thought about it and said, "Now the survivors should be hiding in the fallout shelter, and the mission inside is to clear out the Yuan Kus in the core area. Remember, we must use our superior forces to eliminate the small number of Yuan Kus. If you see a large group of Yuan Zhen, you would rather retreat than fight them. We have already lost too many swordbearers in Yuzhang City. We cannot lose any more. Do you understand?" "Yes, Lei Mu understands." "Lei Mu will arrange it now. Lei Muhua finished speaking, but he didn't hang up. Do you have anything else to tell me? Guhan asked curiously. It's like this, Master. One of us found something strange, but we don't know if we should report it to you, Lei Mu said. What is it? Tell me. Guhan had a feeling that this strange thing was what he was looking for. It's like this, one of the sword bearers told me that he found something wrong with the council building. It doesn't look like the usual building. Not the usual building? Tell me in detail, what is going on? Guhan's tone was still urgent. It's like this sword bearer is the liaison between the sword committee and the council, so he often stays in the council building. He is very familiar with the council. According to him, a painter had mixed the wrong color when he was repainting the outer wall yesterday, causing an area that was supposed to be yellow to turn purple. The painter had been scolded for half a day at the entrance, so he had a deep impression of him. But now, the purple area has turned yellow again, so he was very confused, but he thought it was the painter who fixed it overnight, so he did not pay much attention to it until he saw the painter just now. After the first repainting, he found out that the wall can't be repainted within 3 days, so the painter planned to change the color 3 days later. In other words, the council building should still be purple, Lei Mu said quickly. Great, the clue has finally appeared. Guhan was excited. It seemed that there was a big problem with the council building. He had to hurry to the council building. Maybe Loki was there. Guhan told Lei Mu to stay away from the council building, then he commanded his animal team to walk toward the council building. Although the council building was located in the core area, it was probably the place with the least number of sword bearers in the core area. 98% of the staff in the building were ordinary humans, and the remaining sword bearers were basically security personnel and communication personnel. Other than that, everything else was handled by ordinary people. In terms of level, the council and the sword committee were two completely equal units. The council managed all the affairs of ordinary people and was responsible for 90% of the daily affairs of Yuzhong City, which was equivalent to the government of China 1,000 years ago. The sword committee only managed the affairs of the sword bearers, and only about 10% of the affairs were managed by the sword committee, which was equivalent to the party committee of China 1,000 years ago. What was very dramatic was that just like 1,000 years ago, just like the government in charge of specific affairs was firmly suppressed by the elusive party committee, here, only 10% of the sword committee completely suppressed 90% of the council. The higher-ups of the council could not even raise their heads in front of the sword committee. The will of the sword committee was the highest will of Yuzhong City, and the council could only accept and execute it. Thinking about it carefully, it was really a very frustrating thing to do. It was not that some people in the council did not think of some tricks to end the current situation. But in reality, it was completely impossible, because the sword committee was made up of all sword bearers. The sword bearers would only play in the sword committee circle, and would not lower their status to go to the council. Without the support of the sword bearers, if the council still wanted to seize power, it would be downright suicidal. A group of ordinary people attacked the military camp, and it was obvious what the result would be. Therefore, although it was not reconciled, the structure of the city had been continued. Although there had always been an emperor above them, and it was a little frustrating, the council still had a lot of power in the hands of ordinary people, and it was at least better than the lowest level of people. In order to facilitate communication with the sword committee and for their own safety, the council building was also located in the core area. At least in their own building, many of the elders and councillors of the council still wanted to maintain their dignity, and did not want to see too many sword bearers, so they did not recruit sword bearers at all, which led to the terrifying proportion of ordinary people in the council. There doesn't seem to be anything unusual about this building. Guhan stood in front of the council building and carefully observed it. Indeed, there was a large area that was painted yellow, but other than that, there was nothing unusual. No, if you look carefully, there is indeed something wrong here, Bastet said with a serious expression. I feel that there is an extremely weak divine power in this building. Although very weak, it is definitely divine power. There must be a god inside. Yes, I feel it too. This divine power seems to be an old friend that I haven't seen in a long time. Isais also stood up and said, It's Hyla, There is no mistake. This is Hyla's divine power of death. This disgusting smell can only be emitted from this half of her face. Hyla, I remember Ife mentioned this name before. It was this Hyla who launched a sneak attack on Song Ife and the others near the quantum teleportation circle, and Hyla should be Loki's biological daughter. It seems like this is the key to everything. We have found the right place, Guhan said in a low voice. This bunch of Yuan Ku is really cunning. Their base is clearly here, but their main force, Yuan Ku, is in the Swordbearers Service Center, misleading us to search there for so long. Are we just going in like this? Ice Eyes curled her lips. This is obviously the enemy's headquarters. If we just barge in like this, even an idiot would know that we will be tricked by the enemy. I even suspect that Hyla has already pulled this building into her Ham Underworld. Ham Underworld? What kind of place is that? This was the first time Guhan had heard this name, and he immediately asked. Oh, Ham Underworld is Hyla's divine kingdom. The hell in their Norse system is similar to Anubis's underworld, Lucifer's underworld, Hades' underworld, and your 18 levels of hell. Anyway, the kingdoms of the dead in the world are similar, Ice Eyes explained. What will happen if this building is really pulled into Ham Underworld? Guhan asked again. That place is Hyla's home field, and Hyla's strength has already jumped to the level of Yuan Ku at the Eon level. Of course, it is impossible for her to reach the Eon level. She is only close to it. Other than that, this soil will also corrode shoes. Corrode shoes? Guhan was stunned again. How could the underworld have such a depressing function? Don't underestimate this ability, Ice Eyes reminded him. In Ham Underworld, you must not touch the ground with your bare feet, or else the soil of Ham Underworld will quickly devour you. Even if you are at the nether level, meteor level Yuan Ku, and your spirit sword level sword wielder, it is the same. That is a land with terrifying magic power. Even us, as universe level Yuan Ku, will lose a foot there if we are not careful. Normal shoes can last for 100 meters, Hongxing Erk's shoes can last for 200 meters, Adi Wang's shoes can last for 500 meters, Li Ning's shoes can last for 800 meters, and Liberation shoes can last for 1000 meters. If you have Liberation shoes, wear a pair of Liberation shoes for yourself, Ice Eyes said with great familiarity. What the hell, how does this Yuan Ku know so much about human shoes? She even started to list them. Chapter 534. Guhan took a look at his dimensional pocket. Although there were a lot of daily necessities and a lot of clothes in it, there were absolutely no shoes that could be replaced, let alone Liberation shoes. However, the council building was located in the administrative center, and there was not a single store selling daily necessities around. If he wanted to buy shoes, he would have to run a few kilometers away. Guhan did not want to waste this time. Guhan looked around and saw the human corpses all over the place. He could only smile bitterly and sigh. He then said to the 3 Egyptian gods, "Come and help me collect some shoes. There are no shoes for you to collect here." Before Bast could finish his sentence, he reacted. "Guhan, don't tell me you want us to take off the shoes of the dead. Since you've already guessed it, why are you still asking? Hurry up." Guhan answered Bast's question with action. He was the first to rush to a nearby man who only had his lower body left and take off a pair of sneakers from his feet. Guhan's feet were the average size, and most men were the same size as Guhan. "I'm crazy. I'm actually going to take off the shoes of the dead. I'm a god after all." Bast sighed, but on second thought, it wasn't him who was wearing the shoes anyway, it was Ji Han, so he reluctantly joined the ranks of taking off the shoes. Although there were quite a lot of corpses around, the number of men, shoe sizes, and pairings was relatively small. Ji Han and the 3 Egyptian gods went around and collected about 20 pairs of shoes. They didn't know if it would be enough for them to enter the council building. "Guhan, there's another person there." Ice Eyes pointed, and Guhan saw a corpse lying in a corner. It seemed to be about the size of Guhan's foot. Guhan was about to take off the person's shoes, but when he got closer, he was shocked. The person on the ground was none other than the Eagle Cat. "Eagle Cat Sword Spirit," Guhan exclaimed. This was the first time he saw a spirit sword bearer in the core area. Maybe he could find the secret of the missing spirit sword bearer from him. Guhan immediately leaned over to the eagle cat sword spirit. He was surprised to find that the eagle cat sword spirit's chest was still moving up and down, and there was a faint pulse. The eagle cat sword spirit was actually still alive. The eagle cat sword spirit is still alive. I want to save him. Guhan immediately took out the last bottle of nano-robot capsule from his dimensional pocket and poured it into the eagle cat sword spirit's mouth. He had used 4 bottles to save Liunian Ling, and this was the last one. Although it was very precious, he could not care so much. After swallowing a bottle of nanomachine capsules, the eagle cat sword spirit's face started to turn red. Following that, it started to cough, and then blood. Finally, it spat out a large mouthful of blood with a hint of white. Only then did the eagle cat sword spirit slowly open its eyes. It's you, Guhan. I can't believe it's you who saved me, the eagle cat sword spirit said weakly. That day at Chongyang Mountain, I was in a hurry to leave and did not bring you back. I'm sorry. Don't say that. You suffered such a big injury for our Yuzhang city. You've sacrificed too much for Yuzhang city, Guhan said, touched. Before I fainted, I heard everything on my personal terminal. Guhan, it was you who saved Yuzhang city. When you came back from outside, you rashly entered the emergency response center and activated the refuge system. Instead, those of us who stayed in the core area not only did nothing, but were tricked into a dangerous place. The eagle cat sword spirit's words were filled with a sobbing tone, showing how much pain he was in. Sir, what exactly happened? Why haven't I seen a spirit sword bearer since I came back from Yuyang Fortress? Guhan asked the question that he could not answer no matter how much he thought about it. It's the pleated sword spirit. It's all the pleated sword spirit. The eagle cat sword spirit's eyes widened, and he immediately grabbed Guhan's hand. Guhan, let me ask you, where is the pleated sword spirit now? Tell me quickly. Pleated sword spirit? Guhan hesitated for a moment. He's currently at Yuyang Fortress, with Master Liu Lei. Right now, most of our troops are trapped in Yuyang Fortress, waiting for His Majesty Hao Tian's arrival. Oh no! Master Liu Lei is in danger. The eagle cat sword spirit spat out a few mouthfuls of blood, and he grabbed Guhan's arm. Guhan, you can contact Master Sword Immortal Cloudy Sky now, right? Tell Master Sword Immortal Cloudy Sky right now that the pleated sword spirit is a spy, a traitor. From the moment Yuyang Fortress fell, he had already betrayed humanity. It was him who framed all the spirit sword bearers who stayed behind, and banished all of us to the land of death. What did you say? You're saying that the pleated sword spirit is a spy, a traitor? Guhan's face was filled with disbelief. That's impossible. How could the pleated sword spirit betray humanity? We didn't believe it either, but when he revealed his true colors to us, it was already too late. The eagle cat sword spirit said with incomparable grief. This morning, after the troops set off, I was still in the hospital recovering from my injuries. In the end, I heard him send a message to all the spirit sword bearers, saying that he had something important to tell us. All of our spirit sword bearers rushed over, and then the pleated sword spirit told us. After leaving the city, he discovered that there were a few underworld-level Yuan Ku sneaking around outside the city. Then, he followed them all the way and found out that this Yuan Ku was actually secretly contacting the higher-ups of the council. After interrogating the higher-ups of the council, we found out that in fact, most of the human souls in the council had already been corroded by Yuan Ku. In fact, the creation divinity and Emperor Zergs were in the hands of these traitors. They used fake offers to lure away the main forces of humanity, and they took the opportunity to use the power of the creation divinity in the council building, attempting to destroy the core of the super-dimensional wall system buried underground from the inside, making us humans lose the super-dimensional wall system forever, and then destroy our entire Yuzhang city. Yuan Ku's conspiracy had been exposed, but the main forces were entangled by Yuan Ku's army, and the quantum transmission array was also destroyed. Therefore, the 2 Master Sword Immortals ordered him to rush back first and lead all of our spirit sword bearers to kill all the human traitors in the council building. When we heard this news, we were extremely anxious and didn't suspect anything, so we rushed into the council building together, wanting to kill those human traitors. However, when we entered the council building, we discovered that we had been tricked. The council building had already been set up with an array by the pleated sword spirit. After we entered the building was moved to the Haimu underworld of the universe-level origin Wormhaler. All of our spirit sword-level sword wielders were trapped inside. Ham underworld is extremely vast, with a radius of tens of thousands of kilometers. We were trapped inside and couldn't find a way out. We spirit sword bearers could only split up to find a way out and find someone to rescue everyone. I was lucky, and only by luck did I find Ham Underworld's hull gate and escaped. The words of the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit finally solved the mystery of the disappearance of the spirit sword bearers. It seemed that all of the spirit sword bearers had been tricked into Ham Underworld by the pleated sword spirit. Could it be that their personal terminals had disappeared and they couldn't be contacted? In that case, what happened at the Emergency Response Center and the exit of the quantum transmission array was also done by the pleated sword spirit. That's right, it was the pleated sword spirit that took away the guards of the Emergency Response Center, and it was also the pleated sword spirit that killed the guards and the scientists guarding the exit of the quantum transmission array. At the same time, it locked the ability of the controller to automatically close the quantum transmission array and let Yuan Ku come in. Guhan suddenly realized. In this case, everything could be explained. There's also the information about the creation divinity. I was wondering why the pleated sword spirit could coincidentally bring Misaka Mikoto back. Misaka Mikoto was clearly severely injured, and 1 or 2 underworld-level Yuan Ku would be able to bring her back. However, Loki allowed her to escape to the pleated sword spirit. It turns out that all of this was planned by Yuan Ku. It's all part of Yuan Ku's plan. He purposely tricked our main force and the 2 immortal sword-bearers out. Guhan was so angry that he beat his chest and stamped his feet. That's right, this is all part of the pleated sword spirit's plan. He said that he wanted to destroy the remaining half of the main force of humanity. It must be easy for you guys to reclaim Fort Yuyang, right? This must be another part of the pleated sword spirit's plan. He must have set up something terrifying in Fort Yuyang to destroy the remaining sword-bearers. Guhan, you must inform Master Sword Immortal Cloudy Sky immediately. Tell him to be careful of the pleated sword spirit. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit wailed. I understand. I'll inform my master now. Guhan immediately stood up and dialed Liu Lei's number. He repeated the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's words to Liu Lei. After a series of messy explanations, Guhan hung up the call. He held the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's hand and said gratefully, Master Eagle Cat, Master has captured the pleated sword spirit. It's all thanks to you. Otherwise, everything would be over. No, it's not over yet. Guhan, our Yuzhang city is still in danger. We must rescue all the spirit sword bearers. Only with their strength can we protect Yuzhang city. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit struggled to stand up. Let's re-enter the council building and re-enter Heim's underworld. I've escaped once, so I'm familiar with the path inside. However, my body was already seriously injured, and now I'm even more injured. I can't walk anymore. Only you can save everyone. I've drawn the exit map of Heim's underworld. I'll send it to you through my personal terminal. You must enter Heim's underworld and rescue all the spirit sword bearers. Please, the lives of all the spirit sword level sword bearers are in your hand. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit held Ji Yuhan's hand and cautiously begged. Chapter 535. Don't worry, I definitely won't go in. Guhan also held onto the Eagle Cat's hand and said sincerely. That's good. Then I can rest assured. Wait, what did you just say? The Eagle Cat only realized that there was something wrong with Guhan's words. What Guhan had just said seemed to be different from what he had imagined. I said I won't go in, Lord Eagle Cat. Guhan laughed coldly and let go of the Eagle Cat's hand. You can stop acting now. With your crappy acting skills, it's hard on me too. Guhan, are you misunderstanding something? Or are you in cahoots with the pleated sword spirit? The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit was shocked, and struggled to escape from the Ji Yuhan. Even though both of his legs could not move freely, and even though he walked like a tortoise, he was still trying his best to escape, as if the Ji Han was some kind of heinous demon. You really like acting. Do you think I'm tricking you? Ji Han grabbed the eagle cat sword spirit's arm and turned him around. Your feet look pretty good. Even though they're dirty and covered in bruises, they don't look like they've escaped from Helm's Hell. Guhan smiled and shook out more than 20 pairs of shoes from his dimensional pocket. Seems like my preparations were a bit excessive. Why did I need to prepare more than 20 pairs of shoes? Wearing my current shoes should be enough. You actually know about the situation in Heim. Seeing more than 20 pairs of shoes, the eagle cat sword spirit knew that he could no longer keep up the act. He stopped pretending to be weak and stood up straight. In an instant, he turned from a patient to a great man. How do you know about the situation in Heim? No human has ever escaped from Hyla's Heim underworld. The eagle cat sword spirit's voice had also changed, becoming sharp like a eunuch's. I know a few friends, and they told me, Guhan said with a cold face. Just a pair of shoes shouldn't be enough to determine my identity, right? The eagle cat touched his beard. Do I have other flaws? Yes, there are many other flaws. Although we've only met for less than a chapter, you have a total of 5 flaws. Each one is enough for me to confirm that you're lying. You're not the eagle cat at all. You're just occupying his body, Guhan said in a low voice. You bastard, you better get out of the eagle cat's body and tell me everything you know, and I'll give you a quick death. You want to kill me with just a sword wielder? What a joke. The eagle cat opened his hand, and the Ziying sword flew out of his dimensional pocket. He remembered that the Ziying sword had been lost, but he did not expect it to be hidden in the eagle cat's dimensional pocket all this time. After the Ziying sword left the sword spirit's hand, it turned into a celestial maiden in violet clothes. She stood before Ji Han with a sword in her hand. Ziying, kill this sword wielder. He's a human traitor. Kill him. The eagle cat said in his original voice. Yes. Without any hesitation, the Ziying sword swung the spiritual sword in its hand toward Ji Han. This was the biggest advantage of artificial sword ladies. They could follow the orders of their wielder to 100%, and they would not hesitate even for a second when attacking an enemy several realms higher than them. Because of this, artificial sword ladies were much easier to serve than natural sword ladies. Most of the wielder who had natural sword ladies liked to complain on the internet, saying that they were too willful and that they were always messed up by the sword ladies. They even wished they had an artificial sword lady. However, this advantage became their biggest weakness at this time. Even if their opponent changed from Yuan Ku to a wielder, they would still attack without any hesitation. If you were a little stupid, you might have been able to survive after entering Heim's underworld. But since you've jumped out, there's nothing I can do about it. You'll enjoy an unprecedented death if you die by the hands of a sword lady. Ha 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 ha. The eagle cat sword spirit laughed crazily behind him, and the Ziying sword kept attacking. Guhan blocked a few times, and his entire wrist felt numb. The Ziying sword's swordsmanship was not great. In fact, it was a little childish. It only had a few straightforward moves. This was the specialty of a sword lady, who was originally a flying sword. They were all flying swords that could take the head of an enemy from 1,000 miles away. They were used for long-range attacks, and when it came to close combat, their weak swordsmanship was completely exposed. However, even though the Ziying sword's swordsmanship was weak, she was a spirit sword lady. Whether it was speed or strength, she was several times faster than Guhan. Guhan had to focus 120% of his attention and use all of his strength to deal with the Ziying sword's attacks. Although Guhan constantly counterattacked and hit Ziying many times, the energy of Ziying's shield was too high. Guhan's attacks were like a drizzle to her. On the other hand, if Ziying's sword struck Ji Han's body, Ji Han's shield would lose at least 10% of its energy. It seems that one sword isn't enough. Guhan only used the heaven-reliant sword to fight Ziying's sword for a while. He knew that if he continued like this, he would lose to Ziying sooner or later. There were no other sword-bearers nearby, and all the surveillance equipment had stopped working due to the power outage. Guhan could use all of his strength without worry. If one sword isn't enough, then let's try another one. Guhan pulled out the scabbard at his waist and held the Duyu sword in his left hand. Both swords clashed with Zi Ying, one for defense and the other for offense. In an instant, the situation of the battle changed dramatically. Zi Ying was suppressing Guhan, but now it was Guhan who was suppressing Zi Ying. Grandfather Ymir, what am I seeing? A human sword-bearer with two sword ladies? Heavens, this can't be real. Seeing Guhan pull out two sword ladies at the same time, the eagle cat sword spirit wanted to see something unbelievable. He took a few steps back and fell to the ground, muttering to himself, "This is impossible. This is all fake. The prophecy has already been proven to be fake. There can't be a human with two swords in this world. This is impossible." Although the eagle cat sword spirit kept saying that it was impossible, the battle was right in front of it. With two swords in his hands, Guhan's battle prowess had more than doubled. It had simply risen to a whole new level. Previously, when Guhan was only using one sword, he was roughly equivalent to a peak-famed sword-level sword wielder. Now, with two swords in his hands, Guhan's battle prowess had jumped to the level of a spirit sword-level sword wielder, the same realm as the eagle cat sword spirit. On the other side, Guhan couldn't help but roar. This was the first time he used both swords to fight. In previous battles, because there was a second person beside him, Guhan had been suppressing himself. Even in a dangerous place like Nanjing City, facing millions of zombies, Guhan didn't use both of his swords at the same time. Only now, when facing the spirit sword-level sword mistress Purple Ying sword, did Guhan let go of all restraints for the first time, completely exploding with the power of the yin-yang sword technique. According to the description of the yin-yang sword technique, the yin-yang sword technique was actually divided into 5 realms. The first realm was the single sword realm, which was the realm where one had just learned the yin-yang sword technique, which was also the realm that Guhan had just reached. By using only one sword maiden to fight, the body's quality and basic attributes would increase to the level of 2 sword maidens combined. In the yin-yang sword technique, there was only a simple description of this realm, but it didn't give it a name. The name single sword realm was given by Guhan, and as the name suggested, it was simple and easy to understand. After the single sword realm was the dual sword realm, which was the state where Guhan wielded both the Duyu sword and the Heaven-reliant sword at the same time. In this state, each sword maiden in Guhan's hands was equivalent to 2 sword maidens, so when used at the same time, it was equivalent to 4 sword maidens at the same time. Its power was doubled compared to the single sword realm. This was the result of pure mathematical calculations. In fact, if the wielder could master the 2 swords and cooperate with each other to use 2 sword maidens at the same time, the effect of a real battle would not be as simple as just doubling. For example, the Zi Ying sword clearly possessed more than 10 times the battle prowess of Guhan, yet it was suppressed by Guhan who had reached the dual sword realm. Its attacks were completely useless, and its energy was constantly being whittled away by Guhan. It would die to Guhan's sword sooner or later. There were 3 other realms above the dual sword realm. Guhan could sense the power of the 3 realms from the description of the yin-yang sword technique. Unfortunately, the 3 realms had many restrictions, so Guhan could not use their power right now. God damn it, human sword maidens are just useless. Relying on sword maidens is useless. It's nowhere near as good as grasping the power in our own hand. If it weren't for the limitations of this useless body, how could this damned human swordsman be the opponent of me, the descendant of a great giant, with my own power? The sword spirit grumbled resentfully before quickly retreating. She wanted to escape back to the council building while the Zi Ying sword could still keep Guhan at bay. Although she was not interested in the sword spirit's body, it was not easy to obtain the body of a spirit sword wielder. She did not want to waste her precious body in Guhan's hands. Chapter 536. From the eagle cat sword spirit's point of view, it should not be a problem for it to leave now, because Guhan was already restrained by the Zi Ying sword. It was true that its body was the body of a spirit sword-level sword wielder, so it should be able to leave this place. However, when the eagle cat sword spirit took a step back, it felt a person blocking its back. The eagle-cat sword spirit quickly turned around and saw the white-haired Bastet standing behind it. "Hello, long time no see, Anaboda." Bastet pressed on the eagle-cat sword spirit's shoulder and said with a smile. "Who are you?" "You can actually say my name." Anaboda, who was controlling the eagle-cat sword spirit's body, was shocked. This was the first time someone called its full name since it possessed the eagle-cat sword spirit. TSK, I can't believe that after so many years, even a few old friends can't recognize me." "Anaboda, didn't you break all ties with Loki and swear never to leave the Frost Chasm? How did you get involved in Loki's matter?" Bastet continued, and the moment he opened his mouth, it was the sad past that Anaboda was most unwilling to mention. "How do you know about these things?" Anaboda was shocked. These things happened many years ago, and even 90% of the high-level Yuan Ku didn't know about them. How did this white-haired guy who suddenly appeared know about them? "Wait, you're not a human, you're also one of the gods." Only then did Anaboda realize that Bastit's body was surrounded by dimensional power, and there was also the flame of the divine spark burning in his body. Only then did she let out a huge sigh of relief. What? They were all on the same side. To be able to know her story, it seemed that she was an old friend of the Norse god system, and not an enemy. "You scared me to death. So you're on the same side. When did Loki find an old friend to help?" "You're here at the right time. Hurry up and help me. Capture this human for me and bring him to Heim's underworld. My physical body is not here. Otherwise, I could transform into my frost giant true body and crush this annoying ant with one finger." She didn't doubt that Bast would stand on Guhan's side at all. This was because Bast's universe divine spark couldn't be hidden from her. In this world, how could a universe divine spirit stand on the side of a sword-bearer? Moreover, her man, Loki, was the leader of the Norse pantheon and knew many gods from different pantheons. It was not strange for one or two that she was not familiar with to appear occasionally. "Oh!" Bast's eyes turned, and a wave of divine power pounced towards Guhan, who was in the midst of battle. Caught off guard, Guhan was hit in the chest by the divine power, and was sent flying more than 10 meters away. Before he could even land, he was tightly wrapped by another wave of divine power, and hung in the air like a dumpling, unable to even struggle. HMPH, damned human. "So what if you're the person in the prophecy? You've still fallen into my hands." Seeing that Guhan had been captured, Anaboda revealed a sinister and excited smile, as if obtaining Guhan was like obtaining a treasure. "What prophecy? Anaboda, can you tell me?" Bast, who was controlling the divine power, said with a smile. "It's not a big prophecy. It's just that before I came out, I found Athena for divination. She said that I would be at a disadvantage against a human sword-bearer who wields 2 swords. See, this human is the one in the prophecy," Anaboda said with a smile. "I see. Since this human is a human sword-bearer who will obstruct you, Anaboda, then I'll kill him now to prevent any future troubles." As Bast spoke, he began to activate his divine power, wanting to strangle Guhan, who was trapped in the middle of the divine power. "Wait. You can't kill him." Seeing that Guhan was about to die, Anaboda subconsciously began to stop Bast. "Oh, what's wrong? Why can't I kill this human?" Bast asked in return. Because. Anaboda hesitated for a long time before finally coming up with a reason. "Because he's a demon in my life, so I have to kill him with my own hands. Hand him over to me. I have to kill him with my own hands to completely eliminate any future troubles." According to the rules of divination, there was indeed a saying that one had to kill a demon with one's own hands. If Anaboda hadn't hesitated for a long time before giving this answer, perhaps Bast would have really believed this reason. "Anaboda, we're not idiots. If you don't tell the truth, then I'll kill this human right now. You can't stop me," Bast said sinisterly. Anaboda had no choice but to temporarily blame his anger on Bast. "I really can't tell you the prophecy. This is a prophecy that Athena and Uriel jointly predicted after resting for 100 years. Other than the gods of Greece, Egypt, and Christianity, no one else has the right to know the true content of this prophecy. Otherwise, Zeus and Yahweh would not let it be leaked." All you need to know is that this human is closely related to the prophecy. I have to bring him back to the kingdom of the gods. You're my friend, and I don't want to see you killed by Zeus with his own hands. I'm not afraid of Zeus's head being filled with mating stallions. Although Bast said this, the divine power he controlled had already released the pressure on Guhan, allowing Guhan to breathe and not suffocate to death. Forget it, I'll leave this person to you. I'll personally ask Loki about the prophecy. Where is he? Tell me, I'm going to find him. Bast threw Guhan in front of Anaboda and was in a hurry to find Loki. I'm not sure where he is either, but he said that he wanted to destroy all the sword maidens first so that he could completely destroy the foundation of humans. I reckon that he should be in some damned place where the humans keep the sword maidens, a place called something sword or something. Anaboda couldn't wait to get rid of this annoying Bast and let him cause trouble for Loki while she brought Guhan to claim credit. Oh, then do you need my help in the Heim underworld? Can Hyla deal with so many spirit sword level swordbearers? Bast asked. Hyla isn't in the Heim underworld, and those swordbearers can't escape from there. It won't be too late to deal with them when Loki returns. Hyla should be at her father's place now. Anaboda didn't have any doubts and continued to talk. She even opened her mind and looked at Bast with the gaze of a mother-in-law. Why are you so worried about my Hyla? You wouldn't like my Hyla, right? Who would like your half-rotten daughter? Bast cursed in his heart, but there was a voice telling him to continue. Helpless, Bast could only remain silent shyly. He would rather bite off his own tongue to admit that he liked Hyla. I say, why would someone like you suddenly appear by Loki's side? But that's good too. Hyla is my daughter, and I watched her grow up. Although her temper is a little bad, she's a good girl. I support you. Anaboda's attitude toward Bast changed dramatically, and he began to really treat Bast as his son-in-law. The reason for this was that Hyla was really a waste of money. Her half-angel, half-rotten body was something that even a god with a heavy taste would not be able to tolerate. In thousands of years, there had not been a single man who had courted Hyla. As her mother, she was extremely worried. Furthermore, there were rumors about Hyla and Loki. Anaboda said that he was eager to marry his daughter off. Now, there was a rare sucker who was quite handsome and strong. No matter how she looked at it, he was a good choice for Hyla. Cough cough. How's the creation deity? Didn't I remember Loki telling me that once he used the creation deity, the entire Yuzhang city would turn into dust? Why hasn't he used it yet? Could he be lying to me? Bast quickly changed the topic and asked. Aya, my good child, the creation deity is not a cabbage that can be used whenever you want. The immortal sword wielder who killed that human has already used it once. The energy accumulated in the Emperor Zerg is only enough to use it twice. It's best to save as much as possible, Anaboda continued, not knowing that he had already sold Loki's biggest secret. It turned out that the power of the Emperor Zerg was only enough for Loki to use the creation deity twice. This was extremely important information. Following that, Anaboda continued to talk about her daughter Hyla, as if she had to become Bast's mother-in-law. Get rid of her, Bast. We don't have time. We have to rush to the sword pavilion immediately. Suddenly, Guhan's voice reached Bast's ears. Bast let out a long sigh of relief. Great, he could finally use this guy who was using a man's body and a woman's voice to promote his daughter. By the way, little fellow, what's your god's name? Which deity from the pantheon again? We've been talking for so long, and I actually forgot to ask about this. Anaboda finally remembered that he still did not know Bast's name. I'm Bast, Bast from the Egyptian pantheon. I wonder if you still remember me, Anaboda? Bast replied. At the same time, his hand was about to press on the top of the eagle cat sword spirit skull. Bast. Egyptian pantheon? That's a very familiar name. Anaboda was stunned. She tried hard to recall, and then instantly remembered a figure holding a sword and standing proudly, as well as a cat following behind this figure. Bast. The slave of Jetian Jendi? The traitor Bast. All the hair on Anaboda's body instantly stood up, and her divine soul immediately wanted to rush out from the top of her skull. She had already discovered that this son-in-law beside her was probably not a fellow who was on the same side as Yuan Ku. Unfortunately, Anaboda was one step too late. Bast's hand had already covered the top of her skull, and Anaboda's divine soul was completely extracted from the body of the eagle cat sword spirit. Chapter 537. Without the support of Anaboda's divine soul, the body of the eagle cat sword spirit fell to the ground. However, the current scene was a little strange. From Guhan's point of view, Bast's palm seemed to be grabbing something, but in reality, there was nothing in Bast's hand. Divine souls can't be seen. Guhan broke free from the divine power. Everything was just an act to dig out the truth about Anaboda. Of course, unless the divine soul itself is willing, the eyes of mortals can't see the divine soul of a god, Bast replied with a smile. Bast, you liar, traitor, god scum. Loki will not let you go. You'd better let go of me now. Anaboda screamed. That was strange. Although Guhan couldn't see Anaboda's divine soul, he could hear Anaboda's curses. Liar! Traitor! God scum! Is this how the gods of the three divine systems see me? There was a hint of sadness in Bast's words. Otherwise, how do you think we would see you? You have done so many heinous things with Zetian Jendi. Fate will not let you go. You will die from your sins sooner or later, Anaboda howled. If Guhan remembered correctly, the heinous things that Anaboda mentioned should be the battle between the three gods of Egypt and Zetian Jendi to kill Yuan Ku. Zetian Jendi had killed countless Yuan Ku in his life, and there were more than 200 Yuan Ku above universe level. Among them, the number of gods that belonged to the three divine systems numbered more than 2 fingers. As far as the Yuan Ku race was concerned, Bast and the other two had indeed done many heinous things. All right, Bast, kill her. She's useless now. We have to rush to the Sword Pavilion immediately. We can't let the Sword Pavilion's dimensional barrier be destroyed, and we can't let the Sword Lady be destroyed by Loki, Guhan urged. Got it. Bastet nodded. However, Lord Guhan, this is only Anaboda's godly soul. Destroying this godly soul will at most greatly damage Anaboda's vitality, but it is impossible to kill her. If we don't find Anaboda's true body and destroy the divinity in her body, Anaboda won't die. If that's the case. Guhan frowned. Then our conversation just now and the fact that I'm fighting with dual swords can't be hidden from Yuan Ku. Also, that prophecy is still there. I'm afraid there will be a lot of trouble in the future. You don't have to worry about that. Once this divine soul is destroyed, many of her memories will be destroyed before her divine soul comes into contact with her main body. Anaboda's main body will never know who killed her divine soul, Bast said with a smile. That's good. Hurry up and do it. What do you want? What do you want to do to me? Hearing the conversation between Guhan and Bast, Anaboda's voice began to scream. Although he could not see the appearance of Anaboda's divine soul, Guhan could feel a huge force struggling with all its might, trying to break free from Bast's hands. It's useless, Anaboda. How can a mere divine soul like you break free from my hands? If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for separating your divine soul and running into the body of a human sword wielder. Bast laughed sinisterly. He picked up Anaboda's divine soul and was about to send it into his mouth. Wait a minute, why was he sending it into his mouth? It looked like he was going to eat this divine soul. Traitor, godscum, I won't let you have your way. Even if I die, I won't let you have your way. Anaboda's divine soul began to swell, looking like a balloon that was about to explode. This was the last ability of a divine soul. It directly self-destructed. At the very least, he had to dig out a piece of flesh from Bast's body. However, all of this was within Bast's expectations. He had long expected that Anaboda would not allow him to eat it. However, it was impossible for Bast to suppress Anaboda's divine soul that was about to explode by himself. Thus, he shouted in the void, Isis, Anubis, if you don't make a move, don't blame me for taking this feast for myself later. Mitch, Bast, you have the ability to take it for yourself. I promise I won't stop you. Isis' somewhat disdainful voice came from the air. She and Anubis appeared at the same time and placed their hands on Bast's. Two divine powers that came from the same source suppressed Anboda's divine soul at the same time. Anboda's divine soul, which had previously expanded to its limit, was immediately suppressed back to its original state. He did not even have the final means to perish together with Bast. Although I have to give it to you, I was the one who fought the entire battle. I was also the one who sacrificed myself. I want half, and you can split the rest equally. You don't have any objections, do you? After Bast suppressed Anboda, he seemed to have started to distribute something. Without us helping you suppress the other Yuan Ku from afar, how could you have such an easy time? The three of us should split it equally. Isis did not budge an inch. Are you fighting for this divine soul? Is this divine soul useful to you? Guhan asked, puzzled. Guhan, you don't know, but there are limited ways for us Yuan Ku to strengthen ourselves. The best way is to devour the divine souls and godheads of other gods to make our own divine souls and godheads stronger. We have been tortured by Yi Qing for 700 years, and our divine souls are very empty. We can use this divine soul to replenish our consumption. Isis took the initiative to explain. It turned out that this divine soul could increase their strength. No wonder these three good friends suddenly started to fight for it. There's no time for you to waste. I don't know how long the Sword Pavilion's dimensional barrier can last. You can't waste any more time. How about this? Bast did the most work. He alone will take 40%, and the two of you will each take 30%. How about this? Guhan did not want to waste time on this kind of thing, so he took the initiative to distribute it. I have no objections. Woof woof. Isis and Anubis took the opportunity to agree. When Bast saw that Guhan had agreed to distribute it, he hesitated for a moment before agreeing. As a result, Analboda, the poor deity, had her divine soul torn into 3 parts by the other 3 deities and swallowed into their stomachs, becoming nourishment for them. The 4 of you can stay here. When the matter in Yuzhang City is settled, my father promises to send you back to the Free City and personally apologize to the city lord. In the sky above the Sword Pavilion floated an elegant and luxurious wide-mouthed bottle. This bottle was made of gold, and it was inlaid with more than a dozen types of gems of various styles. Every gem could be sold for hundreds of millions of dollars in an auction house. Such a bottle floated quietly in the sky above the Sword Pavilion. The bottle was tilted slightly, and a small stream of water flowed out of the bottle and dripped on the dimensional barrier outside the Sword Pavilion, causing the entire barrier to tremble. This was the scene that Guhan saw when he arrived at the Sword Pavilion. There were not many Yuan Ku around the Sword Pavilion, and there were no powerful Yuan Ku. Guhan was even confident that he could get rid of all the Yuan Ku around the Sword Pavilion without the 3 Egyptian gods taking action. But where was Loki? Didn't Annaboda say that Loki was in the Sword Pavilion? What about Loki? What about his daughter, Hela? Where did they go? Guhan focused his gaze on the tilting bottle above the Sword Pavilion. It seemed that all the answers were in that bottle. Bast, Isis, do you recognize that bottle? Guhan pointed to the bottle and asked Bast and Isis. We have never seen a bottle like this before. Bast and Isis shook their heads. But looking at the style of this bottle, it doesn't look like the style of the Norse gods, but it is similar to the style of the Greek gods. They want to be as gorgeous as possible, and any less gorgeous would be a form of torture for them. This is something from the Greek gods. Guhan nodded slightly. Never mind, I'll ignore this bottle for now. I'll get rid of the Yuan Ku first. This time, Guhan didn't ask the 3 Egyptian gods to hide their strength. Instead, he led the 3 U-level Yuan Ku to kill the demon beasts around them from 4 directions. In less than 3 minutes, the unlucky demon beasts Yuan Ku were all killed, and the entire Sword Pavilion seemed to have returned to peace. Let's enter the Sword Pavilion and take a look. Guhan waved his hand and put the 3 U-level Yuan Ku into his dimensional pocket. Then, he passed through the dimensional barrier that was constantly shaking under the water from the bottle and pushed open the door of the Sword Pavilion. Arth! Oh no, Yuan Ku is here. Guhan pushed open the door and heard girls screaming inside the Sword Pavilion. There were still people alive in the sword pavilion. Why didn't they go to the sanctuary? Guhan looked at the people screaming and saw that they were all wearing the uniform of the sword pavilion service staff. It seemed like these girls were the original service staff of the sword pavilion. They were quite lucky. The other humans were killed by Yuan Ku, but the sword pavilion was protected by a small dimensional barrier. Therefore, before the dimensional barrier was broken, they didn't need to worry about their own safety. Be quiet. The dimensional barrier hasn't been broken yet, so Yuan Ku can't enter. A male swordsman walked out and yelled at the female service staff. Then, he walked up and sized up Guhan. Who are you? You look so familiar. I think I've seen you somewhere before. Guhan. The current commander-in-chief of Yuzhang City. Guhan raised the heavenly sword in his hand and said, maybe you recognize me because of this. Heavenly sword. You're the disciple of the pavilion master. Seeing the heavenly sword, the swordsman finally remembered who Guhan was. Chapter 538. Guhan scanned the sword garret situation and realized that there were at least a few thousand survivors hiding in the sword garret. He estimated that more than half of the sword-bearers were hiding in the sword garret. It was no wonder, as there were only two places in the core region that had the protection of the dimensional barrier. One was the heaven-shrouding mountain villa, and the other was the sword garret. When the ordinary people in the sword garret encountered danger, their first reaction was to hide in the sword garret. What's going on? Didn't you hear my order? Why didn't you listen to me and escape into the shelter? Guhan asked the sword-bearers next to him angrily. Just now, Guhan made a broadcast to all the sword-bearers and survivors in the core region, telling them to hide in the shelter. But why didn't the survivors in the sword garret hide in the shelter? Chempage. Hearing Guhan's question, the sword-bearers standing next to Guhan immediately pulled a long face. This Guhan was probably the disciple of the pavilion master, so the pavilion master arranged for him to be the temporary commander-in-chief. He really thinks he's a big shot. Of course it's because it's safer here. With His Majesty shrouding heaven suppressing the sword garret, no Yuan Ku can come in. This place is safer than any shelter. If you don't even know this, how can you be the temporary commander-in-chief? The sword-bearers said in a strange tone. However, he was right. The dimensional barrier in the base cities was basically the same, but the one in the sword garret was different. Because the sword garret was very important, the dimensional barrier was enhanced by Gendi's power. It was said that after the Sword Emperor built the sword pavilion, he used a mysterious method to modify the sword pavilion's dimensional barrier. After the modification, the dimensional barrier would be able to ignore the attacks of all low-tier universe-level elemental puppets, and the damage caused by universe-level elemental puppets would be reduced by 95%. In terms of defense, it was invincible. However, it was said that this mysterious blessing method consumed something very important to Gendi, and it required a lot of rare materials. It could not be used on the dimensional barrier that was smaller than a miniature one. Therefore, only the most important places like the sword pavilion could enjoy such treatment. Therefore, the swordsman was right. In terms of defense alone, the safety factor of the sword pavilion exceeded that of the sanctuary. Even if Rocky attacked personally, he would need at least 2 to 3 days to break the dimensional barrier of the sword pavilion unless he used the creation godhead. However, the problem now was that the creator's divinity was in Loki's hands. Loki had already decided to use the creator's divinity on Jiang'e. Once the creator's divinity was used, the survivors in Jiang'e would definitely die. Therefore, Guhan was very anxious to criticize the person in charge of this place. Why didn't they move the survivors to the shelter? However, Rocky didn't seem to be in the sword pavilion at the moment. He only left a water bottle in the sky above the sword pavilion, but he was nowhere to be found. What did he want? Where are the Rockies? Where is the controller of the dimensional barrier? Take me there immediately. I want to see the situation of the dimensional barrier. Suddenly, Guhan remembered the scene he saw just now. The dimensional barrier was constantly trembling under the impact of the water bottle. This scene made Guhan very uneasy. He faintly felt that the problem was with the water flowing out of the water bottle. Even if you are the temporary chief commander, the Sword Pavilion has always been independent of the Sword Council. You are not a member of the Sword Pavilion, and you have no right to see the controller of the dimensional barrier. You can either hide here or get out of here. When this sword wielder spoke, he didn't even look at Ji Han. His arrogant aura was even more awesome than Ji Han's from before. Guhan glanced at the swordsman. He was a famed sword-level swordsman, and it seemed that he should be the highest level among all the swordsmen in the Sword Pavilion. Naturally, he regarded himself as the person in charge. Now that the temporary chief commander, Guhan, suddenly appeared and ordered him to do this and that, the person in charge was naturally very unhappy. Idiot. Guhan didn't have time to waste on this kind of person. He had to figure out what the water bottle above the Sword Pavilion was for. So, Guhan clicked on his personal terminal, and the entire internal structure of the Sword Pavilion was projected. All the key positions of the Sword Pavilion were marked in detail, including the location of the controller of the dimensional barrier. The controller was in a single room on the left of the first floor, and Guhan saw it at a glance. Ignoring the swordsman beside him who felt good about himself, Guhan ran straight to the controller. Oh my god, he just projected the internal structure map. How did he get this map? This map is the SS-class secret of the Sword Pavilion. The swordsman was in disbelief. The internal structure map that Guhan projected just now was not the kind of map that was hung on the wall of the scenic area for tourists to see. It was the most detailed secret map that only the higher-ups of the Sword Pavilion could see. All the key positions of the Sword Pavilion were marked on that map. Even a famed sword-level swordsman like him who had been guarding the Sword Pavilion for more than a decade had never had the chance to see this map. Damn it. That bastard must have stolen the secret of the Sword Pavilion and obtained this map. I have to stop him. I can't let him mess around in the Sword Pavilion. A self-righteous bastard like him will definitely destroy the safety of the Sword Pavilion. The swordsman instantly felt a strong sense of responsibility. With the thought of stopping Guhan from destroying the Sword Pavilion, he directly chased after Guhan's footsteps and rushed into the control room. The door of the control room was open. As soon as the swordsman entered the room, he saw Guhan staring at the data in the controller with a very serious expression, as if he had seen something terrible. We must evacuate all the survivors. All the survivors must hide in the shelter. You staff, collect all the bodies of the innate sword ladies and hand them over to me. The Sword Pavilion is no longer safe. The innate sword ladies can't be hidden in the Sword Pavilion. Guhan looked at the screen and said quickly. Similarly, Guhan didn't look at the swordsman from beginning to end. Are you crazy? The swordsman had an expression of I knew you were crazy. I told you, the Sword Pavilion is the safest place in Yuzhang City. Also, who do you think you are? Why should the innate sword ladies be protected by you? You are a treasure sword-level swordsman. What right do you have to protect all the innate sword ladies? This is against the rules of the Sword Pavilion. According to the rules, even if it's just an innate sword lady, you must get the approval of the Sword Pavilion master. Please leave the control room immediately. You are not welcome here. Idiot. This time, Guhan didn't say it in his heart. Instead, he said it out loud, causing the swordsman's face to turn green and purple. What did you say? You better watch your mouth. The swordsman said loudly. The quarrel had attracted the attention of many people. Everyone silently looked at Guhan and the swordsman. They didn't know what the two of them were arguing about. Qin Feng, a famous sword-level swordsman. I joined the Sword Pavilion 12 years ago. Now I am the captain of the Sword Pavilion's guards. Every year, the assessment is serious. Am I right? Guhan turned around and looked at the eyes of the swordsman named Qin Feng. How do you know? How do you know so clearly? Qin Feng stuttered. It wasn't strange for Yi Shiwen to know his name. It wasn't strange for him to know when he joined the Sword Pavilion. It wasn't strange for him to know that he was the captain of the guards. But how did this guy know that every year's assessment was serious? Qin Feng murmured in his heart. The evaluation was something that was only announced to the sword bearer himself. It was impossible for others to know what his evaluation was. The previous information could be collected openly, But the results of the 12 years of evaluation was something that was impossible to collect. Only by controlling the Sword Pavilion's database would one be able to obtain this information. Don't worry about this. Let me ask you again. Do you feel that the Sword Pavilion's dimensional barrier is very safe? Guhan sneered and asked. Of course, the Sword Pavilion is very safe now. Qin Feng immediately patted his chest and said. He pointed at the 100% data on the monitor and said proudly, "Do you see this? This is the data that shows the energy of the dimensional barrier. The energy of the dimensional barrier is now 100% full. Even if Loki came, he wouldn't be able to deplete the energy of the Sword Pavilion's dimensional barrier without 3 days. Of course, the Sword Pavilion is the safest place." Qin Feng's words caused the surrounding onlookers to nod. They all had the same thought as Qin Feng. Previously, Guhan's order was transmitted to everyone's personal terminal. If they wanted to enter the shelter through the passage, no one would stop them. However, they all agreed that the Sword Pavilion was safer than the shelter. Therefore, not many people immediately entered the Sword Pavilion. It's 100%. Then let me ask you again. What is the maximum energy of the dimensional barrier? Guhan questioned again. Of course it's 10 million. It's written here. Can't you see it for yourself? Qin Feng moved his finger to another data. It was the place that showed the specific energy value of the dimensional barrier. However, compared to the huge 100%, the energy value seemed extremely small. But when Qin Feng saw the data, he was dumbfounded. He fell to the ground, his body trembling, and he couldn't say a single word. What's wrong? What did he see? Seeing Qin Feng's reaction, everyone was whispering. They didn't know what Qin Feng saw. You guys take a look together. Ji Han tapped on the monitor, and the data of the entire monitor was projected outside, reflected in everyone's eyes. 850000. This was the energy value of the dimensional barrier that everyone saw. The huge 100% next to this value was especially eye-catching. All the abnormalities were blocked by this 100%. Chapter 539. The original intention of the display's designers was to allow the observers to read the specific situation of the dimensional wall as quickly as possible. Therefore, the display's percentage of the dimensional wall's energy was designed to be particularly eye-catching, occupying more than half of the display's surface area. As for the specific energy figure, it was a little small. People who didn't specifically look at the numbers wouldn't notice the specific figure at all. It was also because of this habitual negligence that everyone didn't notice the real change in the dimensional wall's energy. They thought that the dimensional wall hadn't been attacked by Yuan Ku and was still in its full state. Why? Why is there only so little energy left? Shouldn't 850,000 be 5% of 10 million? Why is it still 100% on the display? This doesn't make sense. Qin Feng said in a daze. That's because the upper limit of the dimensional wall's energy has been changed. Guhan put his hand on Qin Feng's shoulder. Don't you understand? The dimensional wall's energy limit is no longer 10 million, it's now 850,000. Oh, no, it's now 840,000. Just as Guhan spoke, the original 850,000 suddenly jumped to 840,000. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the dimensional wall's energy had decreased by 10,000. At this time, the dimensional wall's energy percentage was still at 100%. At this time, everyone believed what Guhan said. The Sword Pavilion wasn't a safe place at all. It was a dangerous place that could be destroyed at any time. Hurry up and escape into the shelter, a person suddenly shouted. Then, everyone immediately began to move and ran toward the passageways of the Sword Pavilion's shelters. They didn't want to stay in the Sword Pavilion for a second longer. A few sword bearers immediately go to the shelter passageways to maintain order in case of a stampede. In addition, the original staff of the Sword Pavilion are not allowed to leave the Sword Pavilion. Immediately start to pack up all the natural sword ladies in the Sword Pavilion and move them to where I am now. The rest of the sword bearers are responsible for protecting the staff in case the sword ladies are lost. Suddenly, Guhan's order came through the internal broadcast of the sword pavilion. The sword bearers and the staff who received the order looked at each other for a while and immediately began to act according to Guhan's order. Why is this happening? Qin Feng was still unwilling to believe what he was seeing. He muttered to himself, "Impossible, this is a dimensional barrier that His Majesty Jendi placed on it. How could they wear down the energy limit of the dimensional barrier? Have you forgotten what happened to Buenos Aires city 300 years ago?" Guhan patted Qin Feng's shoulder and pulled him up from the ground. 300 years ago, a similar situation occurred in the defense battle of Buenos Aires. The upper limit of the energy value of their dimensional barrier was constantly weakened. In the end, it was reduced from hundreds of billions of energy value to only a few hundred million. Then, it was directly destroyed by a run-level Yuan coup. It was a crushing defeat. 90% of the population of Buenos Aires died in that battle. That's right, I've seen it in the history books. This was how Buenos Aires fell 300 years ago. It's simply a copy of our situation this time. Qin Feng also remembered that the crushing defeat of Buenos Aires had always been a mystery to humans. No one knew how the energy limit of the dimensional barrier disappeared. They could only watch as the energy limit of their city's dimensional barrier continued to weaken. In the end, when there were only a few 100 million energy value left, they all rushed out and fought with Yuan Ku, who besieged the city. In the end, they suffered a crushing defeat. Only a sword immortal level swordbearer escaped with some swordbearers through the Void Gate. Even when they rebuilt Buenos Aires city, they still did not understand what had happened and what had attacked their dimensional barrier. Master Jiyu Han, will our sword pavilion be like Buenos Aires in the past? Qin Feng asked in fear. He was extremely afraid. He was afraid that the sword pavilion, which he had fought for 12 years and treated as his home, would turn into the Buenos Aires of the past and collapse all of a sudden. Who knows? Jiyu Han shook his head. Any guesses are useless. The only thing we can do is to do our best. Master Guhan, you're right. We can only do our best. Qin Feng's eyes regained some spirit. He cupped his fists at Guhan and said, Master Guhan, if there's anything you need me to do, please let me know. I will definitely do my best. Don't worry, there will naturally be something for you to do later. Just wait here. Jiyu Han didn't say anything else after he finished speaking. He watched as the service staff continuously piled boxes containing the sword maiden's body in front of Jiyu Han. Every time a box was placed in front of Guhan, Guhan would store it in his dimensional pouch. In just 10 minutes, more than 1,000 natural sword ladies in the sword pavilion had been stored in his dimensional pouch by Guhan. Seeing Guhan store the natural sword ladies in his dimensional pouch, the service staff and the swordbearers who were protecting them all wanted to say something, but no one jumped out in the end. They just silently followed Guhan's orders and kept moving the lifeblood of Yuzhong City. Only Qin Feng, who was standing beside Guhan, could not hold it in any longer. He jumped out in front of Guhan and said very seriously, Master Guhan, please show us the pavilion master's order. At the very least, you have to show us the order that the pavilion master has appointed you as the temporary commander-in-chief of Yuzhong City. Otherwise, you can't take these natural sword ladies away. This is the rule of the sword pavilion. You are indeed a very serious person. Guhan smiled. However, my master did not order me to take away all the sword ladies in the sword pavilion, nor did he give me a written order to be the temporary commander-in-chief of Yuzhong City. He only gave me the temporary authority to control the entire Yuzhong City. If that is the case, Master Guhan, you can't take away these sword ladies, Qin Feng said, holding his breath. This is not allowed without an order. Seeing that someone had finally jumped out to stop Guhan, the other service staff and swordbearers all stopped in their tracks and silently watched the development of the situation. All right then, let me ask you. If we don't take away these sword ladies, once the sword pavilion's dimensional barrier is broken by Yuan Ku, these sword ladies will still be here. Won't they be given to Yuan Ku? Don't tell me that the Yuanying will abide by the rules of the sword pavilion like you. Guhan said coldly. Hearing Guhan's words, Qin Feng could only sigh and move away from Guhan. The other people continued to move the sword ladies. Guhan was right. Yuan Ku would not follow the rules of the sword pavilion. They had no other choice but to hand the sword ladies over to Guhan. When the last natural sword lady was handed over to Guhan, the entire sword pavilion was almost empty. All the precious natural sword ladies were now hidden in Guhan's dimensional brocade pouch. This was the safest place. Even if Guhan did not stop Loki's plot in the end, Guhan could immediately return to Chongyang Mountain and bring these precious sword ladies to Yangjing City. Are all the natural sword ladies here? Guhan glanced at the surrounding service staff and sword bearers. Why do I feel that one sword lady is missing? The service staff and the sword bearers looked at each other, and the last service staff said, "Yes, there's another sword maiden that isn't here. It's on the 6th floor, and we can't go in or take it out." The sword pavilion was divided into 6 floors. The first floor was for ancient swords, the second floor was for treasured swords, the third floor was for famous swords, the fourth floor was for spiritual swords, and the fifth floor was for immortal swords. The last floor, the 6th floor, naturally contained the number 1 sword lady in Yuzhang City, Emperor Sword Lady. Lord Guhan, you might not know this, but without the permission of the pavilion master, no one is allowed to enter the 6th floor. We have worked in the sword pavilion for more than 10 years, but we have never seen the Emperor Sword Lady, let alone take it away, Qin Feng said dryly. They really could not take out the Emperor Sword. I see. Then I'll go and take it myself. Guhan smiled. Under everyone's gaze, he walked into the elevator beside him. After the elevator door closed, it began to climb up step by step. The 2nd floor, the 3rd floor, the 4th floor. Finally, it stopped at the indicator light of the 6th floor. This meant that Ji Han had successfully entered the 6th floor of the sword pavilion. Without the permission of the pavilion master, no one was allowed to enter the 6th floor. It seems that this Guhan really has the permission of the pavilion master. He was just teasing us. One of the sword bearers saw this scene and immediately let out a sigh of relief. Without the permission of the pavilion master, they had tacitly agreed to help Guhan take all the sword ladies away. This was a huge responsibility. If Guhan was a liar, a criminal, a madman, or an unlucky guy who lost all the precious sword ladies, then everyone would have to bear the responsibility. Even if they died 10,000 times, they would not be able to make up for the loss of Yuzhang City. These sword ladies were the future of Yuzhang City. Now that they saw that Guhan had stopped on the 6th floor, they really heaved a sigh of relief. Without the permission of the pavilion master, unless Guhan barged in, it would be impossible for him to reach the 6th floor. At the very least, it would be impossible for him to reach the 6th floor by taking the elevator. After a few minutes, Guhan walked out of the elevator with a calm expression. Lord Guhan, the Emperor Sword Lady. Qin Feng hesitated for a moment and couldn't help but ask curiously. All the sword ladies are with me. I will definitely ensure their safety. By saying all, Guhan undoubtedly admitted that the Emperor Sword Ladies were in Guhan's hands. Then, at this moment, Guhan already had 2 Emperor Sword Ladies in his hands, although Guhan could not use any of them. Alright, it's fine. You guys go and take refuge. I don't know if the sword pavilion will be able to survive. Guhan gestured for the rest to take refuge. At this moment, the display showed that sword pavilion's dimension protection wall only had 450,000 energy left. Of course, the percentage was still 100%. Based on this speed, sword pavilion's dimension protection wall would disappear completely in at most 20 minutes. Lord Guhan, aren't you going to take refuge with us? Qin Feng was stunned. From the meaning behind Guhan's words, it seemed that he did not intend to take refuge with them. I am Sword Pavilion's pavilion master. I must fight to the last moment of Sword Pavilion, Ji Han said with a smile. Then, he pushed open the door of the Sword Pavilion and strode out with his head held high. Did I hear wrongly? Qin Feng finally reacted. What did Guhan just say? He was the pavilion master. Suddenly, all the sword bearers in Sword Pavilion received this message on their personal terminals. This is an SSS-level secret. No one is allowed to leak it. It was signed by the 26th Sword Pavilion Master, Guhan. It should be pointed out that this signature was not written by Guhan. It was added by the system automatically. What did this mean? Every sword-bearer was dumbfounded. Chapter 540. The problem is with this water bottle. Guhan came out of the sword pavilion and released the 3 Egyptian gods. He looked at the water bottle in the sky and said, "The water from this water bottle must be wearing down the upper limit of the sword pavilion's dimensional barrier. We must destroy this water bottle in order to protect the sword pavilion's dimensional barrier." "You want us to destroy this water bottle?" Bast looked at the water bottle and said very cautiously, "This water bottle has an unusual origin. I can feel a powerful force from it. This force is even greater than the combined power of the 3 of us gods. To be able to wear down Gendi's dimensional barrier, this water bottle's power is not ordinary. Strange, I know a little about the Greek god system's artifacts, but I have never heard of them having such a thing." Bast touched his mustache. "How will we know if we don't test it?" Guhan also stared at the water bottle and said, "Bast, don't do it yourself. Use your godly power and see if you can move the water bottle down." "I understand." Bast nodded and used his godly power towards the water bottle in the air. After making sure that the godly power held the water bottle firmly, Bast began to use his strength and tried to move the water bottle down. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Bast's face was a little red, but he didn't move the water bottle at all, not even at the nanometer level. "Damn, why is this water bottle so heavy?" Bast's face was extremely ugly. "What's wrong? What's wrong with this water bottle?" Guhan also asked. "Very heavy. This water bottle is very heavy. It is even heavier than a mountain," Bast replied. "Very heavy? Is it just because it is heavy that it can't be moved?" Guhan asked curiously. "Yes, when I moved this water bottle, I didn't feel any other godly power. This water bottle is simply too heavy." When Bast said this, his face was extremely gloomy. As a divine god, Yuan Ku couldn't even pick up a small water bottle. If this news spread, Bast would lose all his face. Could it be that there's a white dwarf in this bottle? Guhan could not help but recall the house key that Yi Qing had given him in the sky-shrouding formation. It seemed that the weight of the key was calculated according to the weight of a white dwarf star. However, this water bottle also contained a white dwarf star. Was that even possible? Forget it. If it's just the weight, then Bastet, Isis, and Anubis, the 3 of you attack at the same time. I want to see if the weight of this water bottle can withstand the strength of 3 universe realm Yuan Ku. Guhan gritted his teeth and said. The 3 gods looked at each other and released their divine powers at the same time, grabbing the bottle. "It's moving. It's moving." Under the influence of the divine powers of the 3 gods, the water bottle could no longer maintain its stability. It began to slowly move away from the sky above the sword pavilion. Seeing this, Guhan began to believe that the water bottle was simply difficult to move because of its weight. However, the speed of the water bottle was not fast. It was simply like a snail. If it wanted to leave the sky above the sword pavilion, it would take at least a few hours. By that time, it would be too late. Therefore, Guhan decided to change his way of thinking. Bastet, Isis, Anubis, don't move it yet. Try and see if you can straighten the water bottle so that the water inside doesn't flow out. The water bottle was not directly in contact with the sword pavilion's dimensional barrier. What was actually directly in contact was the water that flowed out of the water bottle. Therefore, Guhan thought that if he stopped the water from flowing out, would he be able to protect the sword pavilion's dimensional barrier? Straighten it. This is even more difficult than moving it. Bast muttered under his breath, but he still obeyed Jiu Han's order and started to straighten the bottle. As expected, straightening the bottle was much more taxing than moving it. The huge consumption caused the faces of the 3 gods to be covered in sweat, but in the end, the bottle was still straightened bit by bit. In the end, the bottle was straightened. A huge ray of light shot out from the mouth of the bottle. The reason why this ray of light was so substantial was because this ray of light that should have shot straight into the sky actually drew a parabola and landed in front of Guhan, forming something similar to a void gate. Of course, as the mouth of the bottle was straightened, the water inside stopped flowing and no longer flowed out. Seeing that the water had stopped flowing, Guhan immediately contacted Qin Feng, who was in the sword pavilion. After a while, he received confirmation from the other party that the upper limit of the sword pavilion's dimensional barrier had stopped falling. The sword pavilion's safety was under control. This made Guhan finally heave a sigh of relief. But what exactly was this bottle? Why was it so heavy? Why did the water in the bottle have the power to wear down the dimensional barrier? This was a question that Ji Yuhan could not answer no matter how much he thought about it. And why did Loki put this thing here? The ability of this water bottle was so magical, and there was not even 1 or 2 high-level Yuan Ku guards around it. It was as if he did not care whether this thing would be stolen or not. But with the weight of this water bottle, it was really impossible for anyone to steal it. Who are you? How dare you touch the beautiful Lord Ganymedes? Do you want to have a taste of the power of lightning? Suddenly, a blonde, fair-skinned boy walked out of the light door that shot out from the mouth of the bottle. Ji Yuhan was a little dazzled when he first laid eyes on this young man. Guhan hated to use the word beautiful to describe men, because Guhan felt that men should be synonymous with masculinity and responsibility. But after seeing this boy, Guhan had to use the word beautiful to describe him. If it wasn't for the thing between his legs, which was only wrapped in a piece of linen, Guhan would really think that this boy was a beautiful woman. What a beautiful man! Ice Eyes saw that the boy was even more explicit. She clasped her hands in front of her chest and looked at him with red hearts in her eyes. She looked like she could not wait to hug the boy in her arms. Even Bastet and Anubis, who were men, could not help but pant when they looked at each other. For them, gender seemed to no longer be important. This boy was so beautiful that the word pretty boy was the most suitable to describe him. Oh, no, the word pretty boy had already been ruined by the Korean trash. Pretty boy was no longer enough to describe this boy's beauty. Perhaps only someone who was favored by the gods could reflect it a little. Humph, you naked men still have to bow down to my tortoise in the end. Disgusting. Ganymedes saw the infatuated expressions of the 3 Egyptian gods and proudly stroked his golden curly hair. He was already used to such expressions. Whether it was a man or a woman, when they saw him for the first time, they all had such expressions. It was really annoying. But the human behind them. His expression did not seem to be infatuated at all. He even looked a little disgusting. Seeing Guhan's expression, Ganymedes was very unhappy. He pinched his fingers and pinched a beautiful orchid, then directly ordered, "You 3, help me kill this rude man." Wait, who are you ordering? Ordering my people? Guhan was stunned when he heard this. This beautiful little guy was quite interesting. He actually ordered his men to kill him. Then something even more interesting happened. Bastet and the other 2 actually turned around and wanted to kill Guhan. Are you stupid? Guhan glared at them, and Bastet and the other 2 immediately came to their senses. Then, they instantly began to feel afraid. What were they doing just now? They actually wanted to kill Guhan. Just because they looked at him, they were actually controlled by this beautiful boy. What was even more terrifying was that they did not feel like they were being controlled by divine power or skills. It was just a subconscious reaction. In other words, they were simply attracted by this boy's beauty and could not help but want to listen to his words. When Bastet and the other 2 thought about this, they were filled with fear. They were not ordinary people. They were the powerful universe-level Yuan Ku. They were gods, but they were attracted by a simple man's beauty. This was a bit too terrifying. Thinking about this, Bastet looked at Ganymedes again with extreme vigilance. Seeing Ganymedes again, he was still shocked by his beauty. However, Bastet and the other 2 who were already prepared didn't indulge in it this time. Their eyes were filled with vigilance. Hey, you've woken up from my beauty so quickly? Ganymedes's voice was clear and sweet like a newborn oriole. I understand. It seems like you are all universe-level Yuan Ku. Then, Ganymedes put on a pitiful expression. 3 hollow wine cups suddenly appeared in his hands. Ganymedes' 3 delicate fingers lightly clamped the 3 wine cups and said with a whimper, "Ganymedes is just a poor boy. Don't hurt Ganymedes, okay? How about Ganymedes pour you a cup of good wine?" "Okay. Okay." Even though they were already vigilant, Bastet and the other 2 still fell for Ganymedes' beauty. They smiled and wanted to take the 3 wine cups. Guhan was speechless. He had no choice but to use a secret method and hit the 3 gods' godheads. Oh 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 oh. The faces of the 3 Egyptian gods suddenly turned the color of pork, and they immediately recovered from the state of obsession. They looked at Ganymedes with a little fear. Boring. Boring. Too boring. Seeing that his charm didn't work, Ganymedes could only throw the 3 glasses back into the door. With a wave of his hand, the heavy bottle that was suspended in the air automatically flew behind Ganymedes. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.